The Design Review Board public meeting of February 12, 2015 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB or by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items as at their discretion. Roll call. Mr. Charchian, absent. Mr. Malikian, absent. Mr. Mardian.
Here.
Ms. Palmer.
Here.
And Mr. Simonian.
Present.
Great. Report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on February 4th, 2015. Oral communications. Do we have any persons wishing to speak? Not a
I don't see any.
Okay. Then we will move on to our regular calendar. We have no consent items or old business items. We'll head down to the new business at 2920 Greenwich Road.
I'll go to Milka.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This first item before you is the proposal to construct a new 3,066 square foot, three-story single-family residence and a 510 square foot attached garage on a lot that's currently vacant. It's 10,903 square feet. The subject site has an average curtain slope of 70% and will be requiring grading. In this case, they're proposing 1,995 cubic yards of earth to be removed. That's combined cut and fill. It is an uphill lot. One of the characteristics about this lot is, if you've noticed, the ravine or the valley towards the, I would say, the west side of the property. There are oak trees in this area, however, none of them will be removed. I've discussed in the report slight impacts, perhaps some pruning may take place as a result of the construction of the driveway and the garage with some of the branches that hang over that proposed area. But again, they are proposing to preserve the oak trees and that are on the adjacent property and some on the towards the rear of the property, and there are mitigation measures included in the arborist report and addendum report prepared by the arborist of record. Mitigated neg deck was prepared for the project. It was circulated for a 20-day public review period back in November 7th of 2013 through November 27th of 2013, and staff at that time did not receive comments. Presently, for the design review, we have received a letter from the Chevy Chase Homeowners Association. So they're present, and I'm sure they'll be speaking. And we've also received some letters that were passed around from the applicant, I believe, in support of the application. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. And for the record, I just wanted to clarify, and we did email you a correction to page 8 of the staff report. So just for the record to show, we are recommending approval. I believe page 8 stated otherwise, but we've clarified that for the record. And the other thing I'd like to highlight as it relates to the project, back in January of 2014, the planning hearing officer, at that time actually, if you recall, prior to our streamlined process, the planning hearing officer would review, through a conditional use permit entitlement, projects like this where they were grading more than 1,500 cubic yards or where the average current slope was more than 50%. Under the current streamlined process, that process is now under the jurisdiction or authority of the Design Review Board. So going back, so you have some insight on the history, the planning hearing officer denied the applicant's request for the conditional use permit to allow the construction of a new development, which was actually higher in terms of the floor area. At the time, it was 3,028, and they were grading 2,422 cubic yards combined cut and fill.
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
The numbers? 2,422 cubic yards of grading.
And how big was the house previously?
3,028.
Thank you.
And they're now proposing, so to compare, 3,066 square feet, but they're grading 1,995 cubic yards. So at that time, the request was denied on the basis that the proposed house did not comply with the hillside design criteria, given the substantial amount of grading, the retaining wall construction, and modification to the hillside. So again, now the authority is under the Design Review Board, and you will be reviewing, again, not only the design, but also hillside design guidelines as it relates to their proposal, grading, and the slope. So that's all within your purview. As I mentioned earlier, the lot is vacant. It's an uphill lot. The upper floors to the house are accessed via an elevator and stairs. They're proposing 1,221 square feet of floor area on the first floor, 1,595 or 1,595 square feet of floor area on the second floor. They have an attached 510 square foot garage located at street level. And in addition, there's a 240 square foot area that's actually floor area next to the garage, which includes the staircase and the elevator leading to the upper floors. There are several retaining walls as part of this project along the front, and a 15-foot high retaining wall at the rear, and I do discuss that more in detail in your staff report. Surrounding area is R1R, and there is ROS along at the south. I've briefly discussed the site planning as it relates to the existing characteristics, and due to the topography of the site, the design attempts to nestle the home into the hillside and relate to its topography. It's been quite a challenge. We've met with the applicant on numerous occasions, and I'm sure they will discuss that further in their presentation as to the different options or site planning options that they've explored and why eventually this was the final product before you. As stated, the retaining walls include the exposed 5 feet high along the front, or they could actually go up to 7, and the 15 feet high behind the house. They do have a paved yard at the rear, ranging from 15 to 18 feet in depth at the rear between the house and the 15-foot retaining wall. The proposed project will result in topping off a knoll, as well as grading across into the ravine of the lot. This does result in significant alteration of the terrain, the removal of prominent natural features, including the loss of some natural hillside form. The project would also require, again, the amount of grading of 1995 cubic yards, but the applicant has made an effort to set the building back, nestle it into the hillside in order to reduce the building's prominence and mass and visual impact on surrounding properties. And again, since the hearing officer's hearing, the revisions to the design do include a reduction to the footprint along the easterly side of the house and reduce encroachment into the knoll and reducing a vertical mass of the house at the front by moving floor area towards the rear and pushing back portions of the vertical volumes at the front away from the knoll. As far as the mass and scale, I won't discuss the landscaping and garage in detail since that's, obviously we have a landscape plan that they're proposing in compliance with hillside design for landscaping. Unless you have any questions regarding that, I'll jump to the mass and scale. What the applicant is proposing to do is incorporate articulation with numerous breaks in the building planes, the roof elements, and use of application of materials and architectural details in order to reduce the mass. The building mass at the front has been a challenge once again, but an effort was made to reduce the vertical mass at the front, especially that portion of the house that sits on atop the knoll. The area is set back further back from the front and broken up into separate volumes. The use of colors, materials, recessed forms serves to articulate the building and thereby breaking it down visually. They've also included siding and fenestration, combination of colors to blend more with the hillside, once again to address the design issue of mass. And the roof is designed as flat, and once again, with this design, hoping to achieve a reduction of the overall mass and scale. That kind of ties in with the building design and detailing a bit. They're proposing a contemporary building or architecture, and again, using combination of siding, colors, materials, finishes that are in keeping with that architectural style. Staff comments or considerations. The first one is that the rendering, and I'm talking about I would say both renderings, the front elevation and the perspective. It doesn't appear to accurately depict the hillside conditions as it relates to the site planning, the topography, and the landscaping. So we would suggest that the applicant submit a revised rendered perspective to accurately reflect those items, including like placement of the house on the hillside, the topography, and the landscaping. Identify the location of the trash area and the mechanical equipment. It's pretty generic that we request from all applicants. And I believe the applicant did mention that he's addressed that, so he potentially may discuss that. And lastly, we would consider moving additional building volume toward the right side of the site, maybe more towards the valley, maybe a little more.
Show it to us, please.
Yes. Let me orient myself. So a little more this, because this is where the valley is. This area in here. So.
That way.
Right.
Do you have any cross-section showing how the existing grade is going to be graded?
Let me look again. I didn't see any in my road plans, but let me verify.
And do you have the other?
I do. I can pass one around for you.
Mr. Chair?
Sure. Go ahead. Let me see if she's done.
Yeah.
I just received these that the applicant has submitted to address staff's comments in the report. And this is the original arborist report on record. There was a addendum that was prepared, but basically it highlighted there were no impacts or changes to the original report that was prepared. And I'll have to look for those cross sections because I don't. I'll look, and if I find something, I'll let you know.
No, but do you happen to have the original CUP, the middle set, even in 11 by 17 format?
Yes, if you give me 1 second, I could go get it.
That'd be great. And also if you have the decision letter from...
I have the decision letter right here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Any other questions before I look for the?
Question, now, clarify the square footage. You mentioned, I come up with 3 different square footages, but I don't see a reduction in square footage. And your staff report dictates that the revisions made to the project reduced grading and total floor area. Actually, the floor area has increased a bit. And I'm wondering how that reduction took place.
It might have been an oversight as far as the floor area when looking at the square footages of like the first and second floor. I should have potentially probably cleared that up a bit, but you are correct. It's slightly higher than what was originally proposed, but the grading did reduce. And I don't have any cross sections of the current.
Can you clarify what's the minimum required open ungraded space?
The minimum requirement open space is 40%.
Ungraded.
Ungraded.
And in this particular case, do we have a number?
Yes, we do.
I saw it on the grading plan, but didn't say percentage. Maybe it's about, what, 43%?
Let me see. Ungraded area is 50.1%.
50.1%. You have a question, Commissioner?
Any more?
Any more questions? Mrs. Simonian?
The new perspectives or renderings that were just handed out to us, do we have any that are taken from the same angle as what is on the wall so we could easily tell the differences between the old and the new?
I don't have any. Perhaps that would be a question for the applicant since he just gave us those.
I had actually one more question as I'm going through the staff report. I don't know whether I should consider that in my review regarding when you circulate this for CUP, you had the whole, departments look at it. Fire department is questioning a turnaround in the street. How does that come in play?
I do have an email, and I'll have to look for it.
Maybe the applicant?
I can inform you on what I discussed with the, I believe it was Mr. Doug Nichols that reviewed it. And he said that this is always an issue, but it's not something that they are requiring for the applicant to do.
Okay.
He's just highlighting an issue that always seems to be coming up, especially with new developments, but it's not something that's required for this project.
Do you happen to know, maybe I should ask the applicant also, the wall height in the front?
The retaining wall in the front?
Yeah, because it talks about, there's a grading plan that I'm looking at, slow wall, talks about 18 inches, but then there's another 2 feet, and it says varies, see note here on.
Are you referring to the soft wall?
Yeah.
The engineer is here, and they are willing to discuss
What's
that.
the maximum height allowed there?
Well, the maximum allowed is 18 inches above grade. They can have a 5-foot-high exposed overall, plus an additional 2 if it's decorative. So a total of 7-foot
Right
high
on the
for
front
retaining
property,
wall.
On the front property?
Yes, parallel to the street.
Parallel to the street, okay. Okay, that's my questions. Do you have a question?
No, this is past sections. This is how much.
I have to get he wants to see the whole plan.
We don't have that in our package.
I did get this one, actually. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions, or are you done? Yes. I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to start with Mr. Edward Hagopian.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Edward Hagopian. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. I'm the architect and designer of this house. I guess, Mr. Mardian, you were asking for the old perspective to compare?
He was asking.
Mr. Simonian
Mr.
maybe was
Simonian.
asking for the old version of the perspective. You want to see this?
Yes, thank you.
This is the wing that is gone. Anyway, thank you for Jay and Milka because we had multiple meetings in almost 1 year to massage to reduce the appearance of this house, and I hope we have been successful. And that wing, I think this is the old one, right, Milka? Is this? No, that's not the old
those
one.
are all the current.
Yeah, if you have the plans that you can compare to see that what we did, we
With the
cut
reduction.
that wing and reduced the width of the building exposed to the street, and we set back upper levels furthermore. You saw the letters from the immediate neighbors across the street, along that street. I want to hand you a map that shows I have numbers in that letters that shows the numbers of 300 foot. These numbers relate to those numbers in that letters.
Thank you.
So 11 of the immediate neighbors are supporting this project, and some of them, they are here today to speak in favor of this project. I do have also the plan that shows where the location of the mechanical equipment, which is the air conditioning unit, and the water heater will be. The water heater will be in a wall unit inside the house where the laundry is, and the air conditioning unit will be on the backyard behind the very last bathroom that we have. May I hand this to you to see that the things that was required to approve this condition? This is the air conditioning unit, and then we have the water heater here, and the trash. In fact, we had in our mind where it will be, but we didn't show. Now we are showing that the trash is here, so very accessible and easy to take it to the street.
Thank you.
Now, if we want to push further more to the right side of the property, then we will lose. May I approach and show you?
Sure, go ahead.
If you look into this elevation here, this elevation was somewhere here in the first design. Now that wing is gone, and we extended the house towards the rear. And if we reduce furthermore, then we lose a row of upper and lower level stands and rooms, that the rooms will be obsolete and not usable. I think we have stayed away from the top of this hill here enough, and I think the issue with the drainage, the engineer is here. If any questions, he will answer that questions. That he has designed a kind of drainage that will take care of that rainwater coming from the back.
Mr. Hagopian, is this the perspective that was submitted for the previous CUP case?
Yes.
I see. Thank you.
That has that wing on the left side. This wing doesn't exist anymore.
I understand. Thank you.
So we have worked very hard for 1 year and tried to. I understand this is a very unique property, very steep slope. I hope we have been successfully nested this house in this property, and I am asking you to approve this project. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
What's the cut slope there, Mr. Hagopian? Is that 2-to-1, the new cut slope that you're creating?
Any cut that is in between two retaining walls, according to the zoning code, has to be 2-to-1 slope. Any cut that is between a wall and no wall, it can go as much as 1.5-to-1.
Okay.
And all the retaining walls, all the in the back, in the front, they are not violating any code. We are not violating any code in this project. And one more thing that I forgot to talk about that, I think. The wall you were asking in front.
In front, right.
That is a requirement by engineering department. It's a slough wall. It's an impact wall. And as Milka explained, any retaining wall in the front of the property, if it's a retaining, not field retaining, but cut retaining, it can go up to 5 feet. If it's parallel to the street and the decorative material, it can go up to 7 feet. And the freeboard of it can be 18 inches maximum. And that is to protect and prevent all these debris that time to time are coming down and going into the street. As a matter of fact, if this house is built, that problem will be solved also.
But there would be grading involved to place the footing of these walls?
Yes.
Okay.
The footings will be towards the inside of the property.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
I might have missed it, but I didn't see anywhere what type of windows you're proposing.
I think we have mentioned in the page of the elevations, we have number 3 glazing, aluminum frame, Fleetwood, factory finished, anodized dark brown.
I must have missed it.
You want me to show it to you?
No, it's here.
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
As you can see, it's a very simple contemporary architecture, very clear lines and a lot of articulations in the elevations. I think it's a beautiful house.
Okay.
I don't know what's your opinion.
Is there a reason that the garage is almost 10 feet high?
Because of because we are trying to reduce the grading for upper levels and trying to push ourselves higher and higher and to reach to the backyard where we have a 15-foot required wall by the building department. If we don't raise it by 1 more feet, then we have to suffer on the back. These are all kind of chain related to each other.
Okay.
Fine.
Any questions, Mr. Simonian?
Not right now. I'm sure there'll be a rebuttal period.
Thanks.
And we could ask questions at that point in time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hagopian.
Thank you. Maybe I have forgotten to say some other things, but in the rebuttaling I will.
Sure. Okay, I want to go to the public. Kathy Hartley.
I'm a resident at 2905 Greenwich, so a near neighbor, and I belong to the CCEA, the Chevy Chase Estates Association, that will be, I think, represented certainly better by speakers to come. I just wanted to really take perhaps a different tack than that group may take, which is to say, many times it's small things that make a neighborhood somewhat disappointing. We've seen on this street, if you're familiar with the street, it's a very narrow street. There are no guidelines for actual garage use. There are garages that are put to different purposes, cars parked willy-nilly, and it's actually a rather dangerous street. And this house will no doubt add somewhat to that consideration. So I'd ask you to consider that. And although the retaining or the buttress-like shape of the house might in fact reduce some erosion, I do think that it's clear that it's being built that way because it's built in an area that is in fact very fragile and takes some element of risk as these kinds of constructions are continually approved. That said, I don't want to be a neighbor that is there and doesn't want others to arrive. I do just want to end by expressing that I think the architecture is not conducive to the kind of environment that the association and other neighbors would like. I would certainly prefer an architecture that's more natural and fitting in the environment rather than a kind of a bulwark against it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Mona Ray.
Hi, I'm Mona Ray, and I'm the owner for that property. And we bought this land for a few years ago, and to make it our dream house. But we work, both of me and my husband, in the defense company, and last 3 years we are living in the kind of Palmdale area just to move on this side. It's kind of very difficult for us to commute that way. Right now, we got a lot of support from our subdivision, and some of them already gave written consideration that positive things. So that's what we are. Basically, we want your guys' support for that, to approve this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Homer Namji. Namj? Okay. Namji, okay.
Hi, my name is Homer Namju, and I have a piece of property there. I took a good look at the plan, and the way it's like terraced onto the slope, and I don't see it like too intrusive to the area, and the way it's colored and shaped and natural. So I would approve it. I would think that it would improve the area.
Thank you, sir. Is it Julius Thomas?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Julius G. Thomas, and I'm a nearby neighbor, but I'm on a vacant site also. I'm give the party, my friends, and nearby neighbor, Mr. Al, and Mona. Sorry, I'm a little.
It's okay.
That's all right. Take your time.
Anyway, I want to only express that I feel that I'll give them 100% support to the new home project being built there.
Thank you.
I know that all the utilities are in the roadway too, the sewers, electric, water, power, everything, so I don't see any problem actually myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Farrell Atlassi? Did I say it right?
Correct. Yes.
All right. You're doing good so far. Okay.
My name is Farrell Atlassi, and I'm a immediate neighbor to the property that is proposed to be built. I'm also a structural engineer, and I have looked at the plans, and I've looked at the ordinances that may have been observed as far as what we call this a design review board, not exactly the planning or the building and safety. So with respect to its design and the look of it, it has harmony with the place. Perhaps some of the opposing neighbors would like to keep these hills all rocky and, flowing into the streets, creating floods, creating, mudslides, so on and so forth. I personally would love to have every single one of these lots to be improved perhaps Mr. Agubian is a little bit modest about his own design. I see a very, very nice flowing design. I see these designs every day. I do this for a living, and I have 100% support for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Alki Ray? Aloki, is it?
Thanks to the board members. This is Dr. Ray. I own the lot. Right now we are thinking of building a house. This is going for last 2 years project. Okay, so we are eagerly waiting to build a house over here. And I work in a defense company. Okay, so we got 2 daughters. We are thinking of moving over here. I see some of the people that are objecting over there. I basically work in a defense company. I'm a research scientist. I know over there. I'm basically engineering backgrounds. I think of it, whatever it is, if somebody builds anything or road construction over there should be some problems. Okay, but once you build it, the house or something like that, that will definitely increase the property of the other value, other houses. Also, regarding this is the thing, mudslides and other things, if you have a house and all, that will basically going to restrict it right over there. So I honestly request all of you guys have a look into it, because Ed Habogian, he took all the effort for last 2 years, and I think so. Hope with all the requirement we'll be able to build a house over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Brian Duran.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Brian Duran. I live at 2900 Graceland Way. I'm president of the Chevy Chase Estates Association, and we support responsible, attractive, and compatible building in the canyon. Just for the record, we don't oppose everything. If it's done right, we are all in favor of it. In this case, we find an interesting design that is well done. Mr. Hagobian, as usual, gets an E for effort. He did a very good job at trying to build into the hillside. But the problem here is we think that this house is in the wrong location. The hillside guidelines were designed to give a guideline and allow for slight variances. We have a 40% over the slope. We have almost 40% over in grading. That's not a slight variance. That's a major alteration of the terrain. As was originally discussed in the decision at the CUP hearing, we're going to top off a hillside. There's going to be major landform change. That's not in the spirit of the design guidelines. The topography should be followed more closely. We respect staff's urging to move the house at least closer to the valley portion so it doesn't reside on the slope too much, because I'm not that well schooled in it, but it does say in the guidelines transitional slopes should not be built upon. And I don't know if this qualifies for that, but I thought I would bring that up for your review. We think that the design is not that compatible with the neighborhood. It's not a bad design, but if you look at it, if you stand back or you look at it from across the valley, it presents a massive face, even though there has been efforts to minimize that. So we don't think that the block-like architecture and the apparent massing is that compatible with what is found in the neighborhood. Should the project be approved in whatever form, we do request that there be some sort of traffic control during the building phase, because it's just a narrow hillside street. And I talked to a couple of neighbors who are concerned about dust and erosion control during the building process. So we would request that that would be a condition put into any building that's done on this street for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Is it Teresa? Yep.
Thank you. My name is Teresa, and I'm a neighbor. I just live like 2 blocks. I'm here to give them 100% of my support because I've already looked at the plan and looked at the building, and it looks so beautiful. And I think it's going to improve my property. And also, over there we have a lot of land. I know some people are concerned about the dust. Whenever you're going to have a building, there's going to be dust. When mine was built, there was also a dust. I know it's going to be, people are concerned about it, but I think we should all give them 100% of our support because I think they're doing a great job. It's a beautiful building. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hagopian, do you have anything to add?
Yes. One of the objecting comments was that the street is narrow. But this garage is set back more than 18 feet that is required, while the other garages in that neighborhood, they are not 18 feet. Some of them, they are very close to the street. So we'll have enough setback there that is much better than the other existing houses there. Also, I would like to mention that in guidelines, it says that it is better to have different style houses next to each other. Am I right or not? It is in the book. I was reading this morning. There's a picture showing a modern house next to a traditional house and say this is good. So we are following that. Now, when immediate neighbors will see this and they like it, then the Homes Association from a far distance location, they come and criticize this project. Are these people who support this project more involved in this project or somebody that is not living in that neighborhood? And you have seen these letters that all of them are supporting. And I give you the map to compare the numbers to see who is living where. That's all I can say. If you have any questions, please.
Do you have any questions, Bob?
Jake? Well, one question I had was just if you would maybe share your thoughts on the original conditional use permit that occurred, and when the project went through that hearing and it was denied, and there were some specific findings that were presented. How have you tried to redesign a project that will be substantially different? And I underline substantially different, not just a wing is removed or whatnot, but what sort of effort has gone in to address those thoughts from before?
Okay. First of all, substantial is a relative word. We have. If you compare the plans of the old and new, you will see that there is completely reshuffling the rooms and many other things there. Since the possibilities on this lot is very limited, everything for the height, for the setbacks, for the entry to the house, trash locations, we are so tight in this lot that we cannot do totally different project. What we did, we went deeper into the property to avoid the exposure of that one wing on that left side, reducing to the minimum possible. In the hearing of the conditional use permit, the hearing officer even mentioned something that we could bring the dirt on the back end, create a wall, an impact wall there. I have some drawings here to show that if we do that, beyond the roof, exposed to the street, we will have 10, 11-foot wall, impact wall, to catch up with that 15 feet distance from the slope. And I don't think that will look nice. That will look very ugly. Now, beside these changes that we have made, I cannot think of that what else we could do to change the style that will have more pitch roof. Let's say if we go for a pitch roof, that will add more to the appearance of the building. Or once we start a hillside project, that location of the garage starts to dictate the rest of the house. You gradually enter the garage. From garage, you start to go to different locations, elevations, rooms, and things like that. Other than that, if we push the building further back, we will have problem on the back with the height of the retaining wall on the back and the dirt. And what else we could do, I don't know. We worked very hard for more than a year, and we ended up with this design that I believe is beautiful.
Thank you.
I guess I have another speaker, Jake Majidi. Come on up, Mr. Jake.
How are you?
Good.
My name is Jake Majidi. I'm the civil engineer working on the grading and drainage. There was a concern about the dust and inconvenience during construction. The city put a, approved a sewer. There was no mainline sewer there a few years ago. They constructed it with no problem. And this project, again, there's a grading permit going to be issued. The dust is going to be controlled. There's going to be traffic control. I don't think there should be any issue. So I am, 100% supporting this project.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jake. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing, but I just want to mention something after I close. Any questions before we close the public hearing? I just want to mention to the public and to the applicant and the owner, our review here today doesn't just entail the style of architecture and the design. We have to also consider grading and the impact on the neighborhood, mass and scale, and all the floor area ratio and so forth. So it's not just pertaining design. I want to put that out there. And with that, start with you, Mr. Farmer. Yes.
I think it's a better design than before, but as Mr. Hagobian stated, this project has limited flexibility due to the constraints of the grade out there. And when that happens, that might mean that you can't build a large house, a boxy house. It might have to be limited in size, and we've gone through this before. That area on the top of the knoll, it's cutting it off. You are changing the whole form there, and maybe, I know you've worked on this a long time, but maybe that left side isn't 2.5 stories or 2 stories. Maybe it's 1 story that sits up so you can minimize that grading. I also think that if the back side appears to be all stucco, and you have an 18-foot wall, that whole area is going to be extremely cold. Nobody's going to go back there. The minimum planting that's in there is practically at grade. So as in all these situations where you have the large retaining walls in the rear, it becomes an unusable area. So I just think this whole thing could be redesigned on that knoll portion especially. I don't necessarily agree with the city's comments about moving it over to the right because that's going to affect numerous oak trees, and then they're going to have to be removed. So I just think it's the whole thing might have to be reduced in size. And another thing, the front elevation is going to stand out more than ever because the landscape plan is not going to work because of that particular slope. The plan shows some 24-inch box trees and shrubs and ground cover all over, and that entire front slope will not be able to be planted. Nothing will grow on it other than the natural vegetation that's there, and it's fairly bare at this point. So it's going to stand out, and there's very little planting that you can do in the front based on the design that you have. So I think that's going to be an issue. And wait for further comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smarty.
Thank you. And I wanted to kind of follow up with Mr. Mardian's comments about the new process. Before we used to have a CUP process, of course, it was a separate hearing. And at the time, we dealt with cases that dealt with more than 50% slope, properties that were narrower than 80 feet, and at the same time, where they entertained grading more than 1,500 cubic yards. And the idea of getting rid of the CUP process and really merging it with the Design Review Board was to help the public and to eliminate one hearing. In other words, before, somebody would have to go to a CUP hearing, and then they would have to go to a Design Review Board hearing, et cetera, and it was somewhat cumbersome. So that is why, one of the reasons, I should say, that now this board has been bestowed with that opportunity to also look at grading as well on some of those issues. And so as we are contemplating these cases, as Chairman Mardian indicated, we're going to be looking at it from all angles. And this is one of the first cases that I believe there were several other ones that had come in front of us, but it's certainly probably the first few of many that had at one point gone through a conditional use permit that are going to come to us. And so I think it was important for us to take a step back in a moment to understand that process. Now, typically, when staff had heard a previous conditional use permit, they had provided some very specific direction in the form of findings, et cetera, which is what I asked Ms. Toledo for earlier, was a copy of that. And that's very important to also point out to the public as well and to others in the audience that have lots in the area that are thinking about going through the new system is we're not going to be looking, this board is not going to be looking at it much differently. At the end of the day, we're judging these projects based on the Hillside Design Guidelines, and the Hillside Design Guidelines are very specific in what we are looking for the applicant to achieve. And so they're the same guidelines. Nothing has changed. It's just one body now. And so when I start to assess the project and really look at the old with the new, I don't see a significant difference. It's a little different, but it's not significantly different. And I believe it's a good opportunity to use this to provide direction to really the applicant. And that's what this is all about, is provide direction, because it seems as though already with Ms. Palmer's comments and where I'm going, there's not going to be a lot of support for the project as is. But it is important, I believe, for us to kind of reiterate what we're looking for. And so at the time, based on the findings of the original conditional use permit, it said the proposed use will not be fully consistent with the various elements and objectives of the general plan.
If I could just jump in really quickly, it's very important that the board couch it. This is a de novo hearing.
Of course.
And while the COP findings exist, any new findings need to be made as new findings
Absolutely.
Based on the design you're looking at.
Absolutely. And it's funny, though,
put that on the record.
As I was going through my thoughts, it just perfectly reiterated in black and white in front of me. And so without really going into a ton of detail, but it says within the zone, the preservation of open space and physical features are also emphasized. Particular project involves 2,530 cubic yards of grading and substantial retaining walls to provide a level building pad for the residents and to provide substantial flat rear yard. Now, the reason why I brought that up is Ms. Palmer's comment about the flat rear yard. And that's why it's not word for word, different number as far as the cubic yards, but the concept is the same, which is, why is that contrary to the Hillside Design Guidelines? In the Hillside Design Guidelines, you're supposed to step back as you go up in the hill. And so as you go from the first to second to the third floor, your building is supposed to step back, and then you're supposed to have a sloped roof that is much more in line with the surrounding context. What that does is reduces the mass and bulk of the building. In this scenario, we have a square building, flat roof, which was exactly what it was before. And so when I'm looking at the new drawings and the old drawings, and if I just squint, they're pretty much the same. And that is why it's important to point out. Now, I could go through several other pages of this and illustrate how some of Ms. Palmer's thoughts were echoed in specific words and phrases. But I don't think that's going to be as pragmatic or as maybe as productive as really talking about some of the self-imposed hardships that are being presented here. And what I mean by that is there's a program, and the program is, well, I want 4 bedrooms, I want a rear yard, I want an office library, and I want to have all these bathrooms, and I want to do all this and that. And once you start to try to fit all that in this lot, you're right, Mr. Hagopian, there's not a lot of places to put that. There's maybe certain ways you could slice that to go about that project. However, I think it really requires stepping back, looking at things holistically, and trying to understand that which part of the program needs to be significantly altered in order to fit within the site and to be within the spirit of the Hillside Design Guidelines. And so, for those reasons, I think the project needs to be revisited with a substantial new look. And I don't mean design look, but a substantial new layout and a substantial new approach. And with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Mr. Chair, and see
Thank you.
if I might have some other comments later.
Well, I concur with my colleagues' comments. I want to mention something else. Although we look at everything, but I'm looking at this property. I do agree with that. You have a program that you have to meet, but maybe not on this lot. This lot. I'm looking at the numbers. That's why I asked. The floor area is right at the max. We have, the height is close to the max. The lot coverage, the graded area, open grade, everything is to the max. I know you're trying to accommodate this house in here, but I think maybe that's not feasible. To me, I'm looking at the cubic yardage. I believe it's excessive. Deviation from the 1,500, 20%, 15%, I can understand. But in this case, when I was out there today and I saw the story poles, and that story pole on the knoll just shows that one level. Now, there's another level below that. So, this building is going to be hovering right on this knoll. I think I concur with Mr. Simonian's comment. The building has to set back and conform with the hillside guy. But in this case, it shouldn't only step back; it should step back. When you're looking at it from the front. And I agree with Commissioner Palmer that maybe that knoll portion should be only one story. And I'm looking at going back to the staff report. I thank you, Ms. Mulca, for providing us the compliance section, as far as development compatible surrounding neighborhood and so forth. Then I go back on page 4. Then you emphasize this, a few times, and I'll read this. The project will result in topping off the knoll as well as grading across into the ravine onto the lot. This results in a significant alteration to the terrain, the removal of prominent natural feature. But then you say he's attempting to make the design work. I don't think in this case, because of the size of this mass, is trying to achieve that. And I do not concur with the findings. When I'm looking at the findings, go back. The 3, site plan for development of the property on a steep slope shall take into account a visual impact on the surrounding. This is definitely a substantial visual impact, in my opinion. And I think the substantial reduction should take place in the grading, in the floor area. That in turn will change the mass and scale. And with that, I'm going to close my comments. And if you have any other comments, Ms. Palmer.
I agree with everything.
So with that, I'll take a motion.
Do you hear some conditions?
Yes, please. Sure.
These are pretty straightforward. The board feels the grading is excessive and that the grading should be reduced substantially. The board feels that the size of the house is largely responsible for some of the grading issues, and that if that size were reduced, it could help reduce the amount of grading. More specifically, the board looks at the kind of the left-hand side, the knoll side of the house, and would like to see kind of a stepping down on the hillside at that area, possibly bringing a one-story section of the house on that left portion, the knoll side portion. The rear yard opens opportunities possibly for moving portions of the house if the rear yard is unusable as proposed. Perhaps there are solutions involving impact walls or other possible solutions that could shift some of the floor area away from the side of the project. And just an overall statement that there needs to be a substantial new approach to the basic layout of the project, the site planning as well as the floor plan and floor area.
I'd like to add that the front portion, however it is redesigned, that there be enough levels and changes in appearance that will allow for some planting, because that slope is a vertical slope. You will not get any planting. So they would have to design some planting areas, soften the house, whatever the new design would be.
Without cutting into the knoll, so toward the area where the driveway and the garage are, to bring some areas, some plantable areas.
Whatever the new design, all the way across, because you're not going to, the whole left side as it is now is not going to be able to be landscape.
And we could the concern is that on the left side of the lot, it's almost like a cliff coming down to the street, and if we're trying to avoid grading that significantly, that would remain. But we'll have
that remains, but however it's done, it might have to be pushed back a little further, but create some planting areas so we just don't have a house that we're not just looking at the facade of the house.
Terrace planters or something to soften the transition.
Okay, so we'll look for enhanced planting opportunities across the entire front of the property that will not lead to substantial grading, but will work with the landform to create opportunities.
Something to complement the house.
Complement the house, okay.
And was that it?
That's everything I had, because it's the big picture kind of things. Is there anything else?
I think just sticking with the big picture is the average square footage in the area is 2,355 square feet within the 300-foot radius. I think if we end up with a house similar to that, however the program works itself out and it follows the hillside design guidelines with nestling the project, stepping it back, sloping the roof, some of these issues will iron themselves out automatically.
But you're not stating that it has to be that average.
No, not at all.
Please don't.
Just clarify that.
Right,
We have that.
correct. These are directions.
Right. Okay.
Will we return for redesigns?
I second it.
Can we open the public hearing?
For what?
You had a question, Mr. Agopian?
Up to you.
Go ahead, Mr. Agopian.
The comments that you made has to be in a way that is possible to do. Pushing the building further back will end up in the dirt, and we cannot do that. And the knoll on the left side, if we make it one story, then the roof of that location will be almost the same as the dirt. How we can do that? Well, we have to be realistic about this project. Please help me in a way that it's possible to do. It's doable. If it's doable, we'll do it.
We are trying to help.
Yeah, but
We're trying
eliminating on the knoll side the second story, then the first level will be
Well, if you
Where
could
did
come
you
up
do
with a
it?
design.
We're not saying that
We're
it
not
has to be
saying
one
we-
story. We're just suggesting something has to be done to.
If we reduce that portion, then
maybe pushing it
a
back.
row of rooms are gone. There's no room there. How we do that?
I think without starting a dialogue back and forth, the easiest way to describe it is there's been 2 public hearings with very specific prescription as far as how it totally misses the hillside design guidelines. And so without going into a very minute back and forth banter, I think the best way to advise the applicant and your client, one needs to step back, really step back, and to approach this from a very different angle. And if that's too conceptual, then I think staff could help you try to understand that
Well,
concept.
the
But
staff
it's-
have been helping me the whole entire 1 year to find the real solution for a house that will sit in this. Anyway, I have one more thing here to show that if you bring that dirt and attach it to the back of the house, we will have 13 feet high wall. I'm going to leave this.
You can leave it with the staff. Okay, we'll take it. Thanks.
I need a copy of it.
We'll give it to him. Thank you, Mr.
Please help
Agopian.
me to be able to design a house.
Well, I think our direction is very clear. I think, substantial reduction needs to take place so you don't have to face these issues. And that's where we're leaving it at. Thank you.
Before you make a
The public hearing is closed.
motion, we need to act, if you do decide on the environmental, meaning adopt it, or you can wait, because since the environmental has to do with grading, it would be your decision to wait until the project comes back, if it does, as opposed to adopting it now.
We'll wait.
Okay.
We'll wait.
So, please, who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Board Member Palmer, and it's return for redesign. And the second was by Board Member Simonian. Call you Art. Chair. Okay, Board Member Palmer?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Chairperson Mardian?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
I got to say, Mr. Kiesel, that is a great tie.
Why, thank you.
It's architectural.
It's an architectural floor plan.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
What a great gift.
Mine happens to be blue, too.
All right. Let's just wait a couple more seconds until everybody leaves. All right. Good evening, members of the Design Review Board. The final case before you this evening is a proposed project located at 4201 Pennsylvania Avenue. The applicant is proposing a 30-unit residential townhome-style development in 10 buildings on an approximately 71,000-acre site. The project plans are on the left side of the board. The currently proposed project is similar to a project that was proposed on the site a couple years ago in February of 2013. The previous project included also 30 townhouse-style units arranged in a fairly comparable configuration, but with a significantly different design. At the time, the planning hearing officer approved several variances. There was a variance variance from the requirement to provide subterranean or semi-subterranean parking. There was a variance to allow a 5-foot interior setback along the southern property line toward the freeway on-ramp. There was another variance granted to exceed the maximum floor area ratio. And then finally, there's a parking reduction permit to not provide all the required parking on the property. The northernmost side of the site plan is actually on another property. It's in a street right of way.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kiesel. I was having a side conversation, so I apologize. Can you please reiterate just very quickly the entitlements that had been granted previously?
Sure. 3 variances. The first one to not provide semi-subterranean or subterranean parking. All the parking that's proposed is located in 2-car garages attached to the units. A variance to allow a 5-foot interior setback along the southern property line. That southern property line is adjacent to the 210 freeway on-ramp. Third variance is to exceed the maximum floor area ratio, and that really has to do with when you don't provide semi-sub or subterranean parking, the garages become part of the FAR. And so that was the third variance. And then there was a parking reduction permit to not provide all the required parking on the property. The northern part of the site, as you see it, is actually city right-of-way. And there is guest parking in that area.
And then also, is there also a Caltrans setback from the freeway on top of the 5-foot setback?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. So is the 5 feet that was granted starting from like the block wall of the freeway?
No, it's 5 feet from the property line.
Okay,
So there's the southern property line, and then the setback is 5 feet from that.
Got it.
So,
and approximately how many feet are from the property line to the block wall of the freeway? Again, I know these are I'm just wondering the rough number.
the buildings are here.
Mm-hmm.
The property line is roughly right here.
Mm-hmm. At the end of the trail.
At the end of the trail, yeah. And then the on-ramp is here, so I would estimate, where's this? I think I've covered up this, scale is 1 to 30. So I would say at the very least, it's probably about 25 feet in this area. And then in this area, it's probably closer to 50.
Right. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. These approvals are still valid until June of this year. The residents are grouped in 10 buildings, each of which contain 3 units. There are 3 floor plans ranging from about just under 1,900 square feet to just over 2,200 square feet. The floor plans are the second row. The eastern and westernmost buildings are 2 stories, and the remainder, the inside buildings, are 3 stories. So the building adjacent to the single-family area to the west, and then the building fronting Pennsylvania Avenue are 2 stories. The 10 proposed buildings are arranged across the entire length of the site. Each residential unit contains an attached 2-car garage, which is accessed from a common driveway located off Encinal Avenue. And then, as I mentioned before, guest parking is located along a portion of the Encinal Avenue that will be retained as public right-of-way. Access to the site will be from Pennsylvania Avenue. Traffic engineering has recommended that only right-hand turns be allowed to enter the site or exit the site. And as a condition of approval, a raised concrete median will be constructed on Pennsylvania Avenue to control the traffic. In the R2250 zone.
Very quickly, Mr. Keeble?
Yeah.
Because I know there's going to be some items that come up, so I'm just asking the questions while you're going off of it. And I apologize if I'm causing any inconvenience, because I know it's kind of hard to stop and go.
No, that's fine.
As far as the rights into the property, both entering and exiting.
Yeah.
So if you're going northbound on Pennsylvania, what is the proper way to enter the property?
You will need to make a U-turn at some point.
Altura.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's gone through transportation and et cetera, and that intersection is appropriately sized to handle a U-turn? Okay.
Yeah.
But just for clarification, when this was the previous traffic study?
I'm sorry, when?
What
Or
you're talking about it is
this was fleshed out during the previous iteration of a project on this site a couple years ago, within the last
I'm just saying
2
that's the
years.
last study for the traffic study.
The last traffic study, I think, was done in it looks like 2003.
Is that when the traffic count would have been done also?
The city may have an updated traffic count from
I mean, they're not
later.
necessarily at the same time.
I'm sorry?
They're not necessarily at the same time.
No.
And while we're talking about access, the rear, I guess, the westernmost entrance, is that something you're going to discuss later, or is now a good time to?
No, I can discuss it now because you mentioned it. The design at this point of the proposed gate is sort of in the final row, right there. And I and the developer have been working, or the applicant have been working with fire and engineering to sort of finalize logistics of that. But at this point, the gate will be located.
Is this
not,
the gate?
No.
This way?
Further, as
All the
west
way
as
on
you
the
can
right
go,
there.
right
Right
there.
here, okay.
Yeah. Would be located in the public right-of-way.
I see.
The goal is to prevent pedestrian and vehicular access back and forth between this property and the neighborhood, but allow it as a public right-of-way to have a crash gate in case emergency vehicles need to get through.
I see. And so if you're leaving the project, you're either going to hang a right onto Pennsylvania from the driveway, or you're going to exit the rear gate?
No. The gate is
okay.
only a
Got it.
crash.
You have
Got it.
only one option to enter or leave the site, unless you're a fire truck
Got it.
in an emergency.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. In the R2250 zone, 25% of the site is required to be landscaped. The applicant is proposing about a third of the site, 34%, in landscaping. Planning is drought tolerant and complementary to the proposed contemporary craftsman style of the development. In multifamily zones, however, trees are required along any property line abutting a single-family zone. So the landscape plans will need to be revised to propose some trees along the far western boundary line where it abuts the single-family residential to effectively screen the development, provide some buffer. That is one of the conditions of approval of the project. The project is required to provide 5,600 square feet of common open space. There is a common central area, approximately 3,000 square feet, is proposed to include play equipment and benches. And then they've got other common open space sort of throughout the site, including sort of I would call it a generous walkway just between the Encinal right-of-way and the front or the most northern units.
So I'll interject.
Yeah.
What I see the provided common open space, 15,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include all the walks? Or what
It does.
Okay.
It includes, for the most part, it includes the common walkway going east to west, and then the common open space sort of in the center of the project.
Okay.
The comprehensive design guidelines recommend that common open space be easily accessible to all units within the project, and to consider actually in larger projects providing more than one. The active open space is roughly located in the center of the site and includes some play equipment, some benches. Because of the large site size and number of units, staff does believe it is appropriate and would provide for an improved site plan to eliminate 2 or 3 of the units, of the proposed residential units, and provide a second active open area, roughly maybe dividing the site into thirds. This amendment for the project would better fulfill another of the desirable features contained in the guidelines, which is encouraging integrating outdoor areas into the design of new projects. Wire metal fence is proposed along the north and south property lines, and horizontally oriented wood fence is proposed along the western property line adjacent to the single-family house residence neighborhood. Another condition that staff is suggesting that the board consider amending the landscape plans to include planting some vines adjacent to the wire fence, just so that it sort of blends in with the landscaping and just enhances the buffer between properties. The mass and scale of the proposed project appears to be appropriate for the site and sensitive to the surrounding development. The eastern and western most buildings, as I've already mentioned, are 2 stories in height, while the interior buildings are 3 stories. This change in building mass from the previous project, I think the previous project, all the buildings were 3 stories in height. The change in building mass addresses another guideline found in that multifamily buildings directly adjacent to single-family homes really should provide some sort of transition to the single-family neighborhood. So this is particularly important in the far western area. Each building contains 3 residential units, and due to the topography of the site, each unit within the building is at a slightly different elevation as well as a plane. These features help differentiate each unit in the building. So of the 3 units each, you can tell where each begins and where each ends based on the topography, elevation, it's sloped down, as well as the differences in plane. This is also consistent with the guidelines, which encourage buildings to be expressed as separate volumes. Since the project is over 90 feet in width, or the project site, I should say, is over 90 feet in width along Pennsylvania Avenue, the maximum height is 3 stories and 36 feet.
Do we know how that is relative to the freeway on-ramp? I mean, are some of the buildings of the on-ramp, some? There's a slope.
The lowest elevation may suggest something. I did not put up all the drawings. Let me roll them out and see if there's anything.
Yeah, this perspective does a pretty good job of kind of depicting the site from the on-ramp. Kind of.
I would guess from going out to the site a couple days ago, most of the units are below the freeway on-ramp.
The entire length of the site is going to be visible from the on-ramp, but it will diminish as you get further along.
There's trees, too.
Yeah, there'll be some trees in there.
The proposed project is designed in a contemporary American craftsman style, and this architectural style is more appropriate to the greater La Crescenta area than the previously proposed project, which was more of a modern design. Materials proposed reinforce the craftsman design. There's a material board posted on the lower left-hand corner, and then there's a sample of the siding. The 2-story buildings are faced with a wood cedar shake, and that's the top elevation. And then the 2 other elevations, or the 2 other types of units, are faced in a wood vertically or horizontally oriented wood siding, which is what the sample right in front of Ms. Palmer is showing. Coronado stone is at the base of the units faced with the shake. That's the top. All the units will have mill guard aluminum windows, and sliding doors are proposed as well. And the slope roof form is consistent with a contemporary craftsman style architecture. Staff does suggest that consideration be given to varying the accent colors for each unit to provide more individuality to each of the units. You notice the accent colors of each of the 3 units are the same. You might want to consider varying slightly the accent colors of each of the units.
They look more like individual houses.
Right. Much of the project is paved with porous pavers. Samples of that, or I should say pictures of that, are on the lower left-hand corner of the board. And then a material called grass pave is proposed in the parking spaces adjacent to the main driveway, so the far northern part of the site. Trash and recycling bins are also proposed in the far north part of the site, and the locations of these bins will need to be moved outside of the interior setbacks. That's where you were pointing before, where you thought the gate was, Mr. Simonian. That's where the trash recycling is. They'll need to just move that, relocate that slightly out of the setback area.
But it's only one for the whole project. That's the only trash area.
Correct. There is no lighting plan, and as a condition of approval for the project and consistent with the comprehensive design guidelines, staff is suggesting that a lighting plan be provided for our review and approval. You had on your desks this evening all of the correspondence I've received regarding the project in the last couple days. And finally, staff is recommending approval of the project with the conditions and considerations stated in the staff report, and that concludes what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Carmi. You had a question? Yeah. I had a question. Maybe you can, this one. Show us how do you propose, you talk about eliminating 2 or 3 units. Can you show it so the public will know which one you're thinking of eliminating to create that additional open space?
Well,
or is it something that we need to look?
It was a. I didn't identify any particular unit or units that I wanted.
You were talking about.
We wanted to eliminate, but either to provide.
Concept.
To provide, if you want, to sort of divide the site into thirds, eliminating this one here and this one here, and redistributing the units such that one goes here, or eliminating these 2 units so that this space becomes common. I didn't specifically identify, this one and this one.
Yeah, because when on your report says front units, I was trying to see which one you're talking about.
Yeah, front units meaning these here. Maybe what you do is you eliminate 2, and then this area becomes a common open area, and
or vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ideal situation we envisioned would be removing at least 3 units and having another kind of vertical kind of park, just so there's more even distribution through the site. And that's in keeping with some of the comments we heard at the City Council hearing for the previous project, looking at a site with the same kind of density. So.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. J. Can you briefly go over these comments? Because we had some correspondence talk about a few of the council members' comments. Is this something that I should consider, or are these?
I haven't verified the accuracy of the transcription. I've kind of done my own.
Can you tell us your own?
And without going councilperson by councilperson, there was a sense that there was an issue with mass and scale.
Okay.
There was a problem with the boxiness of the previous design that I think is addressed well with this design. We also think that the change in mass at the front and back units here, reducing from 3 stories to 2, brings down the sense of mass where I think it's most important that it be brought down. There was not a lot of there was varied discussion about the appropriate design. While the other design was seen by some council members as too modern, other parts of the discussion said it's not about the design, it's more about the kind of mass and scale issues. There was a general sense, I don't know if it was universal, that the project was too dense and the unit count was higher than they were hoping for or expecting based on previous iterations of the project.
And how many units was the previous project?
It was the
30.
same number of units.
Same. Okay.
Yeah. Almost universally, they kept coming back to the same terms, size, mass, and scale, and then a focus on kind of the boxiness of the previous project.
There was no number discussed as far as the density is concerned.
One council member said there was a hope that it would be reduced to 3/4 of its size. Another council member said he was surprised that there were 30 units. He thought it would be somewhere in the 20s, but there were no specific numbers mentioned. Well, I guess 3/4 is somewhat specific. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that covers.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Simoni. Go ahead.
And so, actually, in reference to Ms. Palmer's question earlier, and the bottom 2 renderings, black and white renderings, I assume they're both depicting the on-ramp. However, one is taken at street level, which is the middle one, which illustrates a more even, I guess, grade between the on-ramp and the actual grade of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's going to be some grading occurring at the property, so it's kind of hard to tell, where it will end up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the bottom one, kind of depicts more of incline of a ramp and the project being below it. To the best of your knowledge, and this would be something we could ask the applicant as well, which one is more, correct?
I'd like to split the difference. I think asking the applicant would be best.
But I also think it may be in between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the 25 to 40 feet of property line, I guess, separation between the on-ramp and the subject property that we discussed earlier, that is, of course, publicly owned, and there's some mature landscaping there. And so all that, I assume, cannot be touched, and it's going to stay as is, as the way it is today.
I would assume that, too. I mean, that the applicant has no control over that piece of property.
I understand. And then is there a way to do a street view on that on-ramp? Does Google allow street views on on-ramps? I've never tried that.
I hope they do.
Yes, they do sometimes.
All right. Okay. Those were my initial questions.
So the site currently is sunken. There's a grade change from this point down onto the site. And you can see the fairly gentle slope rising toward the freeway level.
And can you maybe pan up?
I think I can drive on it.
Technology at its best, huh?
This is not a bad view here. You can.
So it's somewhat level. Well, not
going down a bit.
Gradually down.
Yeah. Gradual.
Further. There's a drop off here. This is more substantial, obviously.
And how high is the block wall? It's a 6-foot block wall on the south side?
It's a wire.
It's a wire chain link.
It's wire.
Wire, okay.
Wire wall here.
Is that even allowed for a track map?
That's what I searched.
Yeah.
Yeah, the design is right here. So I think this was in your packet.
How tall is that? 6 foot, you're saying? It's like a 12-foot in the packet.
I want to say it was like 5.5 or 6 feet. That may be something you want to confirm with the applicant.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, I said that.
Oh.
Wait for the architect.
Mr. Kiesel, so if we lose 2 units or 3 units as you're suggesting, so the variance for the floor area ratio is eliminated basically because the percentage is not
Yeah, I would guess,
Okay.
although I haven't done that calculation. I'm not
Well,
sure.
I'm assuming it's 0.5 that they've asked for.
The variance has already been granted.
So, but if we lose and then variance is, one of the variances is eliminated.
Kind of a moot point.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I read somewhere, I don't know if it was in the environmental, there's a distance requirement from a private driveway to off-ramp or ramp, freeway ramp. Is there a distance that we need to consider? Because there was some discussion.
There's not a distance that you need to consider, but our traffic engineer has looked at that, and during the city council hearing, it came out that there's a 50-foot distance from driveway to freeway on-ramp that's expected, and during that discussion, and they were estimating, I think, during the hearing, they were looking at about a 75-foot or more distance between the driveway and the on-ramp. I don't know if any of these drawings would help with that.
But do you feel that meets that requirement?
The driveway is basically in the same location
Yeah, from what we've heard, it's okay.
currently as the previous project.
All right. That's it. Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, no, not for
Mr. Chair, if I may just answer one question. Board Member Palmer was asking about the coming northbound on Pennsylvania and the U-turn at Altura.
I think it's Altura.
Yeah, it was. And you were asking about traffic counts too. So at the hearing in 2013, at that time, they said the most recent traffic counts had been in 2011. And there were about 20,000 trips per day. And the traffic engineer stated that U-turn action would result in probably about it would be about one every 6 minutes during the peak period, and which he was satisfied with. And he also noted that stoplight had been put in there not because of, yeah.
Have they been out there in peak traffic? I'm just saying it's a lot more critical than I think the traffic. I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, that was the traffic engineer, or the city traffic engineer.
Time, and it's an issue now. Anyway.
Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Anything else? I'm going to go to the architect, Mr. Mark Ganji.
So we have a short presentation that
Sure,
Matt Ganji will begin. PowerPoint.
It's easier.
And if you would state both your names for the record.
Sure, I'm Mark Ganji.
Welcome.
And I'm Matt Ganji.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're really excited to be here in front of you today. I want to start off by saying that we had a community meeting. We sent out 400 letters to the community and made phone calls to other folks. And one thing that we really heard from the community was the gate on Encinal, that they really wanted there to be no pedestrian or vehicular access, which is something that we've been working on and we'll continue to work on with the community and with staff till everyone's happy with it. And the other thing we heard was sound wall. People were interested in a sound wall. So as far as that Caltrans property that you were talking about, if there would be anything there, we were talking to people in Assemblyman Mike Gatto's office, and we were talking to people at Metro and at the county to try to support a public effort to get a sound wall built there, which would benefit the whole community. We, this is a substantially different design using what Mr. Simonian was talking about before from the previous project that was before you. And we looked at local initiatives and plans and listened to stuff that was said before from the community and tried to design something to meet all those things. So The project is designed to the North Glendale Community Plan, and so the design, it shapes positive community change. The design fosters sustainable land use, and it also balances unique character of community with citywide policies and regional initiatives. It's also designed to the Greener Glendale Plan, which contributes positively to energy reduction. The design contributes to helping water reduction, waste reduction, transportation, urban design, and urban nature. The design was also designed to the Safe and Healthy Streets Plan. So the design follows a new vision of Glendale where residents live safer, healthier lives by walking and riding a bicycle for both transportation and recreation. It's designed to LEED, which is a benchmark for sustainability, and to the top tier of Cal Green. We'll be implementing new technologies, like in the two garages, having EV charging stations on site. And residents can plug their car directly into the sun because there'll be solar hookups. And there'll be water conservation. We've looked at a gray water system to use for all the landscaping. And there'll be permeable paving so that the water can go back into replenishing groundwater. There'll be drought-tolerant landscaping. Natural materials, alluvial stone is something that's unique to Crescenta Highlands and the neighboring Highway Highlands. And there'll be native North Glendale landscaping. And there's going to be open space for urban gardening, over 20,000 square feet for things like this and other sustainable activities. With that, I hand it over to Mark, the architect, to get into some of the more details.
Thank you, Matt. Like Matt said, we started this project by looking a lot at the, really looking in depth at the previous project and what the comments were both from the council and the community, and seeing if we could envision a new project that could meet these. That could meet all this input. This project started as a project that we owned up in the hillside, and this property was originally zoned for 33 lots. When we bought it, it had an approval for 9, and what we ended up doing is trading 28 acres, which is the top lot there, and just building 2 lots, just building 2 houses on it, for the property at Pennsylvania Avenue, along the 210 freeway in Pennsylvania Avenue, which is approximately 1.63 acres. The idea was that here we could do a more of an urban infill project. It is a challenging site with the freeway and the large apartment blocks that are next to us. So we thought a lot about placemaking and how we could create a sense of place at the project. And but also on the positive side, it's a true urban infill. It's near transportation. There's a bus stop on the corner, and we're also very close to parks and schools, all within walking distances. 3 blocks to a park, 2 blocks either direction to middle school and high school. So that gives you a sense of the aerial of the large apartment blocks that are directly to the north of the site, and of course the 210 freeway. And this is directly looking north. So you saw it when we were going up that driveway. This is the current elevation as you're going along the freeway. So if you look at our site plan, it's a very different idea. It's a townhouse typology that has 3 units max. It has an emphasis on open space, both shared and private. And it's done to a style that's eclectic and rural style that's prominent in the Crescenta Highlands. The density allowed on the site is 39 units or 54 units if we did an affordable housing project. The density proposed is 30 units. The required 25% landscape, we provide it 34% landscape. 5,600 square feet is a common open space requirement. We've provided 15,340 square feet of common open space. So, several of the comments on the previous plan related to the site plan and how it addressed neighbors, both at the Pennsylvania Avenue, they considered it too large, and at the R1, which is the areas that border the western site. And so what was done on the R1 is we nearly doubled the setback that was previously proposed. So we're back. We're now back at 19 feet 9 inches in our narrowest point. And also building height was 36 feet previously, and now we've got a 2-story building with 24 feet there. We've also provided a large open space in the center of the project. Now, the previous design did not have this, and there were many comments from the community that although they met the guidelines, or although they met the number, they actually didn't have a place where people could congregate. We don't really agree that we should have 2. We think that we need to work very hard to make the one active and vital, because every unit, as you can see, has a very large private open space as part of the design. So the idea of integrating indoor and outdoors, we've done that. We've done that with private open space. So that's the building directly to our north. And the North Glendale Community Plan design says that new development should be designed to fit into the immediate context. This was the one area that we decided we should break from that. And so we said, well, we really shouldn't do this project. We should do this project, a smaller, more loosely assembled collection of buildings that provides a much nicer view from if you're driving on the freeway and you happen to look that. Now, people were talking about the different areas as far as the heights compared to the freeway, so I can answer that now. We have both to the right side of the drawing. We have to the left, we have the height of the adjacent neighbor, and then we have the height of the freeway. So the freeway height, which forms a bridge over Pennsylvania, is higher than 2 or 2.5 stories of our project. Just the top story would finish in height. And if you look at a section in the other direction, and this is what might have been causing some confusion with the renderings, that's the slope of the on-ramp. So pretty much you're at the freeway height by the time the on-ramp moves across the site. But that's a slope, so it's at grade or just slightly above grade at the beginning, but at the end it's up at the freeway height. And that's the height of the freeway as it comes down across Pennsylvania Avenue, which is to your right. So it shows how we're really kind of in a hole down in that space. So the design, we looked at combining Crescenta Highland styles with sustainability. So we call, instead of a mid-century, we call it a mid-21st century design. The Crescenta Highlands features North Glendale's most diverse collection of architecture, ranging from simple craftsman bungalows to modern-style post and beam tract homes. And so, therefore, the design of Northwoods, which were one of the names we're calling the project, reflects the traditional elements of the surrounding context, including materials such as alluvial stone and other woodsy elements, while also containing elements of a more modernist design. So, to the right is the previous design, and so what we thought was, well, we should do a project that has more pitched roofs, so it gives more differentiation between the units, has a little bit more variety, and also provides this connection to the outside from the units at the ground floor. So this was the previous project as viewed from the freeway, and this is what the community and the council had a strong reaction to. And so we decided we wouldn't do this project, we would do this project. Again, smaller, more woodsy, more in keeping with the character and scale of the greater community. This is across Pennsylvania. Looking at the site, this was the previous rendering. They had a setback with parking in the front. It was compared to an industrial park or an industrial building. So instead of doing that, we designed this, which is a 2-story building that faces the street. From those sidewalks, you can walk directly to porches that are in each of those units and into the building. This is also then just further under. So we're actually under the bridge at that opposite corner looking. And if you spend time out at the site, and if you've been out there seen the photos, we had to eliminate on the rendering a large portion of the trees that are on that corner because you wouldn't have been able to actually really get a good view of our building from there. So that's our project. We're really happy to present this to you, and we think that the issue of the density, we don't think it would help either our project or the previous project just to reduce in density. It was really an issue of design. I believe it was a real knee-jerk reaction about density. When you see a building that looks very massive and very out of scale, you say, wow, it looks too dense. And that was the response that some people had. But I think, with our project, we're below the density that's actually allowed on the site, and we've exceeded the open space requirements. So we'll be available for questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Ganji, can you hang on for a second?
Sure.
You may have some questions.
I have a lot of questions. You're talking about the stone. Is this going to be the real stone that we have in the area, or I think I read Coronado stone?
Yeah, we would like it to be the real stone, and usually we find that on site. However, the previous use of this site was a recreational zone, but it was used by Public Works as a gravel crushing operation, and there was a lot of churning of the site material. We don't know how much we'll recover from the site. But what we've done in other projects is, when you dig in this area, you run into these rocks, and so we always stockpile them and try to use them on site.
So the intent is to use the real stone.
That would be the real intent, yeah. But we put Coronado stone because we thought, well, what if we're not able to recover any of these? It turns out to be very expensive to import them.
I noticed all the wood siding and the railings and everything. Is the wood siding is the texture 111?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what about all the vertical railing and horizontal railing?
Some of it is designed very much like this. They're 2x2s that are put on the outside of the building, and to give a little bit more relief. And then we also have some horizontal siding as well.
And then the shingles are real shingles or hardy?
They're like a Cedar Town shingle. That's a true cedar.
So what happens 10 years from now when all the wood starts deteriorating?
Well, if there is that issue, and places always need to be maintained. There will be a homeowners association that will have a plan in place for upkeep and maintenance. However, we have used these materials on other projects that we've done in the past, and we've in Glendale, and we've been by to look at them, and we think that they're holding up really well. And actually, this material doesn't have a huge level of maintenance.
And the window surrounds and depth, are they recessed at all, or?
Yeah, they'd be recessed, and then we would have wood trim around the windows and doors.
How much of a recess are we talking?
Maybe a couple of inches. Yeah. Typically, we'll put another nailer on and then set it back from the face.
And what about downspouts and gutters? I didn't see any on the plans.
Yeah, we would have that, and yeah, we'd design that as well as we could.
And let's see. Oh, the trash. You only have one trash area?
Right. Now, this was a big issue from the last plan, and something that we spent a lot of time with staff working on. By the way, I didn't get a chance to thank Roger and Jay for both working with us over this last year. But they were really helpful. And one of the issues was the previous plan had approved, which is an approval to use individual trash cans. But when they thought about how those could be wheeled out to the driveway to be picked up, they really were struggling with. And maybe Roger, you guys have more recollection of the internal issues of that. But it was a real problem to have these individual trash cans throughout the site. The previous developer that we were working with, they thought that somebody would like to have their own individual trash can. We didn't think that it had a big impact on sales or anything, and so thought about an idea of a centralized trash location. So
I think 2 bins is sufficient for.
Well, it's designed to the requirements, and I think it would be sufficient.
I've got a question on A5. You've got just community park, and I don't find that on here. Got the letter B. Right here, this square B says community park, and I don't know where.
Okay, it should be here. That's the main.
Oh, okay. And then E, trash bin enclosure. I don't see that either.
And that's this.
Where's the community park?
Because that's different. Doesn't have.
The main one is supposed to come to this point.
Okay, but that's what you mean by that.
Yes. Sorry about that.
And then, bear with me a second. That's Oh, this may be a minor detail, but you've shown oak trees along that walkway that goes where the driveway comes through.
On the landscape plan.
On the landscape plan, you show them in, let me have it reversed. You show them in the front yards, and on the other plan you have, you showed it in what I would call a parkway. You know,
Right. Well, I do know that, and you can see it on our site plan where we have some trees along that driveway. The intention of the look of that driveway was to make it look like a small street. So we started looking
how
at.
wide is that little parkway area?
It's I believe it's 25 feet in some areas and 20 feet in
How
some
wide?
areas.
Just a little planting area along that
Oh, the
strip.
planting area? I'm not sure, maybe 3 to 5 feet.
The reason I'm asking, you've called out 4-foot box trees,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't appear to be large enough to accommodate that. So I'm not sure if it's there or on the landscape plan they show in the front yards.
In the front
So
yard
that's just
area.
something.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there was also the recommendation that they be planted along the western, that we plant trees along the western property line. And Roger and I talked about this yesterday. We have trees there, but they're shown in the private garden area. So what we'd do is we'd either add additional trees or we could slide those out so that they met that
Has
requirement.
traffic looked at the fact that you've got large oak trees on the corner where the on-ramp is? That
You know,
may be
a
site
lot of
issue?
those there's a lot of existing trees along
Just
that side.
proposed.
Oh, I'm not sure. Roger.
Traffic has not looked at the landscape plans.
I know that we usually.
A site issue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know that we do have that comment from them sometimes on the sight lines.
I think I'm good for now.
Great, thank you.
Till later.
Mr. Ganji, can I ask you a question? You have these 3 units, they have a transition with the garages. How are you going to make that transition with that? It looks like you have 2 feet of stepping between each garage. I'm assuming this is your driveway, you come in and pull in.
Right.
And this here.
Yeah, so what happens is as it steps down, so all of the units step with the topography of the site, and so they both step down, and then to add variation, we slide each one forward.
I understand.
And what happens in that case, that's where some of the areas are steepest, because we're following that slope of Pennsylvania Avenue. And so if you look on the site plan, we actually have more length than what's required for a driveway. And so what would happen is you would have a driveway that would slope down, and then you'd have some warped planes that would lead back to those driveways, to make those driveways. In between are small planters, because what we've done is we've taken the space of backup, which is 25 feet, and combined it with the space of a driveway, which is 20 feet, and taken any space that's not directly in front of the garage and tried to add landscape areas.
I get
That walled in, or
I get that.
It would be like kind of like a curve. A curve.
is it going to be like this? So.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it
a little bit.
seems too steep for me to,
Right.
I mean, that's about 2 feet of transition within 5 feet. I mean, you know.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have that transition right there. You'd have the slope of the driveway,
Still
and then
pretty
you'd
tight.
turn into it, and that would be a warped plane that would warp back that way to get you flat by the time you hit the garage door entrance.
I'm just, you know, maybe you need to revisit that a little
Yeah.
more, you know, carefully to make.
Yeah,
it
we'll get a
little
civil engineer to
better
lay out all the
transition.
driveways. Yeah.
Another question.
But the intention is to step it in order to make it a little more
I
interesting.
appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we can get into these garages
Sure.
in a smooth transition. Any bicycle parking?
We will have bicycle parking in the. This is something we talked to the community about. We'll have obviously there'll be private bicycle areas in the private gardens, but then we've talked about adding bicycle parking to the community garden space.
I think I'm good for now. Go ahead, Mr. Simonian.
Thank you. So you mentioned earlier that the windows are going to be recessed. Are you anticipating 2x6 framing?
Yes.
Throughout the project?
Exterior walls, yeah, 2x6 framing.
Okay. And as far as the true cedar and the true wood siding, have you considered hardy material?
We have, and we've used it in the past, and we've used it very successfully in the past.
And As far as the open space calculation is concerned, you had indicated the 15,000 square feet, which I think includes overall walkways, access points, etc. The middle open space, I'm calculating it by 37 by 86, which is about 3,200, say, give or take. Is that accurate calculation as far as the interior open space is concerned?
Yeah, I think so, because if you look on both sides of that, then you also have private outdoor space. So the buildings would actually be set back a ways from that, so it'd be a little bit more open, but we really want to make sure and put a lot of attention into that space so that it's used.
Sure.
Because everybody has large private open spaces. So we wouldn't want to try to replicate things that you could do basically in your own backyard that you do in the shared space. So it's really set up as a larger gathering area, play space, really multifunction space. Some bicycle parking, maybe some outdoor barbecues. Really set up to be serving of that neighborhood of a space that they would need.
Makes sense. As far as the sound wall is concerned, and I know this is kind of in the future of negotiating with public authorities or whatnot, but if it were to go in, where would it more or less be located?
It would need to be located along at the edge of the freeway and possibly at the edge of the on-ramp. And so, if we put some kind of a wall where we are, well, the sound's just going to come right over the top of it. And that's why we thought it might be nice to have currently they have a chain link fence there. And so we thought it might be nice to upgrade the chain link fence with a decorative wire fence. And part of that reason is because this is one of the few areas that I see where Caltrans does have a number of trees and plants on. It's kind of taken root here and held. So we'd like to extend our view into that space. And we have, like Matt said, we've made these connections already and started to outline the process for a public effort sound wall system, and it's been done successfully in other communities. La Cañada is building one.
Okay. And just a couple of last questions. I noticed there's no overall roof plan. Has that been something that's been turned in, or does staff happen to have a roof plan for us to consider holistically?
I can look.
And the last question is when I'm looking, I noticed there's 3 plans, and is there an easy way to understand which plan type is utilized in what area? Because I could tell there's a key at the bottom of the elevations, but I'm unable to notice the difference or differentiate between them. So in essence, we have 3 plan types, and so looking at it from here, this is plan type 1, I assume?
Okay.
So these are 1s?
Yes.
And then what are these guys?
Yeah, so then what happens is the plan type that we have is set up so that from the garden space, which is the entrance to those units, you would have a similar plan grouped together. I could show you.
Can you come up? Yep.
It appears to alternate between 2, 3, 2, 3.
I requested earlier to have an elevation of the whole site. I think you provided it.
We did that. Yeah.
Can we put that up? Maybe we'll answer your.
Yeah, sure we can.
Because that will show which.
Sure. That'd be very helpful.
So the thought was, and it also kind of speaks to one of the recommendations that maybe the colors should vary here. Part of the process was we came in with a lot of variations and stuff. At some point, it got a little too varied, and so then we brought it back a bit. So this building, really faces the street. Garages along the back, porches here. That's the cedar shape. Then this building.
And that's plan type 1.
And that's plan type 1.
Okay.
And then we have plan type 2, which is in this area. Now, when I say plan type 2, I mean that these buildings have a similar look. So they have a similar look and a similar color. So this is kind of the olive green building. So if you're walking,
which is right behind your elbow, I assume, right?
Yes. Yeah. So when you're walking down this walkway and you're going to these entrances and stuff, you're in a courtyard that has a very similar building type to it. Yeah.
So it's 3 and 2.
Well,
Is that right?
here's what happened. So we're designing this driveway to look like a small street. And so what happens is...
Oh, they are marked. I see.
Yeah, this plan is very different from these two plans. These two plans have an east-west orientation.
Yes.
And this plan has a front porch and an entrance that fronts this.
Understood.
Fronts this
So it's a
driveway.
plan type 3 with a different orientation as far as the entrance is
Right,
concerned, and
right.
windows from the living area to the
Yeah.
driveway.
Actually, we have when you look at the balcony variations, we have quite a few plan types, but we're trying to make it as simple as possible. When you get then to, then here we have a transition. So on this side of the driveway, you'd have this green building. On this side, you would have this building, which is more of a natural tone, warm color. And that would be then here. And so that would all have the same, similar coloring, same basic plan, but different balcony configurations and some different roof configurations. At different times, we turn the roofs in some different configurations. And again, one of the things we did with staff, we talked about a lot of different roof shapes and types and settled on a few that
So
we
if I
thought.
may just ask one question. So then if one is to stand here and they're looking this way, and if they're looking towards Pennsylvania, they're going to see this elevation more or less, or the bottom one?
Yeah, so this is the one that's facing the driveway. So it has a
Okay.
trellis that leads you into this space, and then it has front doors and some overhanging porch space that would be part of that. Then when you're inside, these are the garage. These are some of the garage elevations. And so you can see what happens, right? These two are facing straight east and west, and then this one's oriented more to the north.
And so which elevation would depict, say, looking this way? Or may
let's
I
see.
mark?
Sure.
So let's just pick one like right here, looking this way.
I don't see it. It's in the package. See it, but it would be similar to.
Which one are you talking about?
He's talking about the opposite
second building?
of this one.
Yes. Right. I'm just picking any one of them.
Okay, so the third one.
Yes.
It's building type 2 and 3.
Yes.
So building type 2 and 3 is this and this.
Mm-hmm.
The
And that's
rendering-
on the driveway side, and then there's, of course...
No, those are on the driveway side. These are the interior elevations as you're looking into the courtyard. Your point of the
Oh, no,
question.
those are garages.
The colored rendering on
Yeah.
the left gives a
If you're here.
decent view of how the roof forms are changing and some of
Oh,
those.
okay. Here you go.
Yeah, where is it?
Yeah, this gives a good indication of the of how the roof forms are interchanging and the colors are alternating,
Right.
and how there's
Because I
variation.
notice a square shape on the northern side of the driveway, which are these square elements.
These guys here. Huh?
Right. And I'm trying to locate one of those.
So that's here.
It's in the background.
Yeah.
I got it.
Right, or here. Right, that piece then wraps that corner, like here, to address the idea that, to speak the idea that this is really an end unit that's along an idea of a small street, and is different than the ones that are on the infill.
And so we have plan types 1, which are 2-story, and they have the sloped roofs, which are along the east and west side of the property, and then plan types 2 and 3 are in the middle that are kind of mixed and matched to provide variety.
Yeah, right. In a working drawing set or in a construction document set, there'd be a lot of plan types that would generate from that because of some of the variation. But yeah, basically that's right. Basically that's correct.
And then between plan types 2 and 3, one of them is the plan type 2 is kind of the man's kind of sloped roof with the Y-shaped roof with HVACs, and then plan types 3 have the more variety to them
Right.
as far as the buildings are concerned.
Right, and those really show up in elevations. We've tried to locate them really at the center of the roof so that we would, although we're going to have screening around them, the line of sight would indicate that they wouldn't be very visible.
Have you tried to locate them elsewhere on the site besides the roof?
No. No, we haven't. We really had we had this discussion quite a bit that there was really no reason with the freeway and the view of the building next door to have a roof garden. And so we really tried to maximize every square inch of planting space and indoor-outdoor space on the ground floor.
But you could still do the split system, to split, furnace in the inside and the small condenser outside.
Yeah, like for instance, you could put it along the south side of the building because we do have some room here. But then we designed a trail that goes along that spot. My feeling is that we can really adequately hide them in the center of the building.
So how do you access them then?
We'd have a roof hatch. In each unit, we'd have a roof hatch, and that roof hatch is a skylight. The skylight into this space, which is the space which joins all the bedrooms.
Are these for sale or for rent?
For sale.
And so, after a design review board or whatnot, it's going to go to a track map hearing?
Correct.
And
The number 1 units are not enclosed with their common area in the front, and the other ones are. I'm just looking at the site plan, or
The units fronting Pennsylvania?
Yeah, the units fronting the front really have
open.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We just thought that was really an important way to.
Fun to find out.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions, Mr. Simonian?
Oh, this is an extra copy.
Yes.
Oh, were they the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for providing that. That helps us.
Yeah, these are the same. So this is the view along the view along the front, I believe, and this would be the.
One last question, and I kind of noticed this in that section you had drawn with the sight lines. It seems as though the grade has been built up from the sidewalk on Pennsylvania. And so I'm wondering, when you're looking at the overall site plan, what is the grading concept?
So what happens is there's actually we're fairly level here, and then it drops because Pennsylvania is dropping.
Okay.
And so the idea is as much as we can make the driveways work, we would step these units down. We also have a fall from front to back on the units, but it's really 3 feet of fall. So we still would step each unit a foot down.
This way.
And so they're stepping down this way.
Where is it draining? Where's all the water draining to?
What we did last time is we had a drainage that was along this line. That connected. There's some existing drainage along here too.
And then is this portion of the site higher than this portion for it to come?
No, but the drain will have to be. It's not necessarily high. It's a little bit higher. There is some fall this way.
Yeah, because when you're talking about this feet, even to get any kind of a fall to it, because you're going to daylight over here.
Yeah, yes.
If you're daylighting here, how many feet is this overall?
1,400. It's a long distance.
It's quite a bit of a fall.
So
even a 0.5%.
Even 0.5%.
Yeah, there's existing drainage on the Caltrans side that drains their stuff that follows that path.
Okay.
And so we thought we would be similar. We're not proposing that we build
400 feet
retaining wall.
minimum.
No, more than
more
that.
than that.
Yeah, more than
500, 450
600
feet.
feet almost.
I think while we're hearing from the public, it would be nice if you could just very quickly give us maybe an idea of what that fall is like.
Okay.
Based on a minimum slope that you will need.
Okay. I think we might have a survey in the.
Yeah, even at 0.5%.
I just so you know my mindset where I'm going with the question.
Yeah.
Is I'm trying to understand what the overall massing of the property is going to look like once you're done with some sort of a rough grade concept. Is a certain portion of the property going to be higher or is it not? And
Yeah,
and
I would
that's
say
where I'm
I
going
would say
with
it's
it.
going to be slightly higher and slightly stepped. Like you can see the stepping. Actually, we did it in the elevation here, so you can see the grade. So this is the two-story building that's next to the single-family zone, and you can see where that grade is versus where it is here.
I mean, even at a 0.5%, it might end up being 20 feet. Maybe you have to bump it out. That's what I'm getting at. But in which case we'll need some sort of a large catch basin area to collect it.
Well, we're doing a lot of projects now under new LID guidelines, and I think Glendale's probably part of that, has adopted those guidelines. But we're infiltrating. We're infiltrating
dry
a
well
lot.
system or
Yeah, we're infiltrating a lot on
it's part of the
projects
requirement now.
with very large perforated pipes that our drainage dumps into and gradually infiltrates out.
You showed in the early presentation a water recapture system. Maybe that's something you could tie into this for
Yes.
irrigation.
Is there any bioswale, the one on the side?
Yeah, I think so. We've been using those a lot in landscape areas. So really,
That'd be an
it's
ideal
really an
place.
effective way to handle some of the retention requirements.
And I'm just thinking out loud. It's not like I'm pinpointing to anything. I'm just thinking out loud of some of the possibilities. Thank you, Bill.
Right. Thank you.
We need to speak a little louder. I think some of the people in the back can't hear us. Okay.
Actually, I think they'd like to speak.
Yes, I know, I'm going there. All right, let's go to the public. Can I, Mr. Kevin Copley? Copley? All right.
We lost somebody.
Mike Heckman?
Commissioners and staff, my name is Mike Heckman. I live at 22 Northwoods Lane, and that is the development diagonally opposite this development on Pennsylvania and the freeway. We're the 58 homes that are adjacent to the south side of the 210, directly diagonally opposite this. And I represent myself, and I also represent the homeowners. I'm the president, and I have visited the Ganji offices, and they've been nice enough to give me a lot of plans, which I have disseminated to our people. There's 58 families that are intimately aware of this project, and I speak also for them. And we spoke about it last night at our homeowners meeting. To be quite frank, we love it. We think it's like our development, very, very similar to our development. Our development is all wood also, and is in very beautiful shape. And we have a lot of people that have bought originally, like myself. I bought originally, and I'm still living there. I've served on the board many years, and I'm president for the last 2. And there's a lot of people in our development that are looking to possibly move here if you people approve it, because we like it more because it has more individual yard space. We're like patio homes. We're about 2,000 square foot patio homes. And what was immediately of concern to everyone that bought in there was, of course, the freeway and the freeway noise. And I'm here to tell you that our homes are quiet and nice places to live. And we like this very much. But the one thing I really object to is the overall picture by staff is, I think, a little myopic. The city, all of us, are beneficiaries of a beautiful ridge line in the trade for these properties. And this heretofore development that was rejected because it was just damn ugly, they brought back you a beautiful, beautiful, sensitive, very good plan, as ours was 40 years ago, and upgraded the community with. I'm a math teacher. I was born and raised in Glendale, went through Glendale schools, and I've taught in Glendale schools. As a math teacher, I want to tell you that when Northwoods Village was built, that was a little bit of a rundown area. And in today's dollars, when it was injected $36 million in today's dollars, that side of the town got better. And this is about half the size, half the property, about half the development. And I think they're being myopic by penalizing, trying to take stuff away when the previous project was okayed, which was here, it was not very good looking and looked really, really big. And this one is soft and nice and woodsy and has our name on it. We like it. I think you're being a little myopic and wanting to cut. They should be rewarded. They could do 39 to 54 units of apartments, which might be a better investment with a better return. And I think they've softened this and made this a very nice development.
Thank you, sir. I need to cut you off. I'm going to
I'm
limit
done.
everybody
Thank you
to
very
3.
much.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Wiseman, please.
Good evening, board members, city staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from beautiful far north Glendale. Back in 2013, I stood at this podium when this board was considering the previous project, the Olson project, and I spoke against that project, and for many of the same reasons why you heard that the city council decided to issue a denial. The boxiness, the mass, the scale, and I actually spoke in front of the city council to urge them to deny that project. So it actually gives me a lot of pleasure to be before you here today, because so far I'm cautiously optimistic that this is a project that I can support and that the neighborhood can support. I think that the developer here has done an outstanding job in looking at the issues and the problems with the previous design with the Olson Company, and they have come back with something that's completely different and much more attractive. And speaking for myself personally, the things that are critical issues in tipping the scales in favor of supporting this development are the major efforts that are being made here for sustainability. The city of Glendale has its own electric utility, and it's very expensive for the city to, the city doesn't produce much power on its own. It has to buy a great deal of its electrical power from other sources. And having units that may be 80, 90, maybe even over 100% sustainable in terms of producing more power than they use. And I'm speaking as someone who has 23 solar panels on my house. It's not a very big house. It's only a little over 1,300 square feet. And through judicious use of electrical conservation, we produce more electricity than we consume, and our energy charge from Glendale Water and Power is $0 and has been for several years. I think if we have a 30-unit development where each one of those units is producing enough or almost enough power to not have to depend fully on the city is a major win, not only for the residents of that development, but for all of Glendale, and especially if there are things like electric vehicle charging stations that are also available. The second sustainable issue I wanted to mention has to do with the gray water system, and I'm very glad to see a major residential development in Glendale for the first time, as far as I know, that's incorporating that. Obviously, we're in the middle of a drought. Our water rates are constantly being raised. It does not make sense to use scarce and expensive potable water for landscape irrigation when we have gray water available, or, as I was also going to suggest, if we have a rainwater catchment system. I know my time is up, and I just wanted to mention one thing briefly right before I go. The original mitigated negative declaration back in 2003, the traffic study that MND was based on was done in November of 1999, according to the Glendale Traffic Engineering Department. And statistics from 1999 show over 21,000 average daily trips per day counted on Pennsylvania between Altura and Encinal. So when I hear that a 2011 study says that it's 20,000, I do not believe for 1 minute that in the last 12 years, the traffic on Pennsylvania has gone down by 1,000 average daily trips, and that might be something worthy of further investigation. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Sharon Wiseman.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Weissman from Far North Glendale, and I first want to thank the Ganji Company for listening to the community and revamping the project proposed for 4201 Pennsylvania. This design is much more in line with the North Glendale Community Plan than the previous proposal. Of particular note are the solar panels for electric generation and charging stations for electrical cars and garages, and the plumbing for gray water collection for use in the subsequent landscape irrigation. And I would also add some sort of swales or some collection for rainwater would be an additional part of that. And the part of the appeal for this plan is the precedent it sets in sustainable design, and I would urge, if this gets approved, the city to work closely with the developer to make this a reality. And I concur with the staff recommendations to reduce the number of units and suggest one way they might do that is eliminating the westernmost building to give more of a transition for the single-family home development, or the neighborhood directly to the west. And three-story buildings would be acceptable as far as I'm concerned on the Pennsylvania end, because the adjacent developments are 3 stories, to give even more transition to the west. And I urge you to make these conditions of approval, the sustainability issues, so that they really do happen. Sometimes good designs or good proposals don't actually get built as they're approved, and I'd really like to see this incorporate these sustainable things. And also, I think the gate at the western end should be as secure as possible. A wall or a fence, a hedge isn't enough. Pedestrians will push through a hedge, and that's all I wanted to say at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Nancy Comeau, did I say it right? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Comeau. I support the Planning Department's condition that there be a reduction in the number of units. 3 groupings will break up the sense of mass and scale and density being one of the main reasons the City Council granted the appeal for the Olson project. Money saved by not having to provide for subterranean parking should help with that. Because this project is a consequence of a land swap with the city and hence a sort of partnership from the beginning, there should continue to be a partnership in terms of working with the Ganjis to install what you've already heard us mention, the gray water irrigation, solar panels, permeable painting, and other sustainable features that they have told us will be included. And we would like to see those be conditions for approval. On another subject related, but much more research has been done in the efforts of on the effects of noise and air pollution near freeways. Residential infills adjacent to freeways is now discouraged. What mitigations are planned by the applicant, and could these be included also in the conditions? For example, triple pane glass, more trees. Through collaboration with the city, with Mark and Matt Ganji, who have done an incredible job with this, and the community, a site that has many constraints has the potential to become a truly exceptional residential complex. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Randy Foster.
Good evening. My name is Randy Foster. I live at 3147 Encinal in La Crescenta, and I'm in favor of the project. I am in a position where we live to overlook the entrance off of Pennsylvania and Encinal, and you've been to the project recently, to the site recently. You know what an eyesore it is as you're entering La Crescenta right off the Pennsylvania exit. And I've appreciated the fact that the Ganjis have done a couple of things. Number one, they did have a public meeting last week, invited so many people to come and ask questions. They've obviously listened to them and have taken under consideration many of the things that were said at the meeting. I also appreciate the fact that they have gone to great efforts to adapt to the comprehensive design guidelines of the North Glendale Community Plan. I believe this project can be a model in the community for sustainability and so many other issues that have already been said. The Ganges, as Mike mentioned right off the bat, built Northwood's project on Ramsdale and the 210. And again, it fits the community. It's beautiful, and I believe that this project here is going to do the very same thing. When people get off the freeway on Pennsylvania, especially coming from the west and then heading north on Pennsylvania, they're going to say, wow, this is La Crescenta, and this looks beautiful. They've addressed many of the other issues that I think are important. I think it's a family-friendly project, and being in the neighborhood, I'm interested in families coming in there. I think that they have looked at the density issues. I've seen the Olson project pictures, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, wow, I would like to live here. Olson project, not so much. I'd like to, park my car there maybe, but not live there. So I'm excited about this, and I encourage you to move ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mark Mitlin? Okay.
Hi, my name is Mark Maitland. I live west of this project on Encinal, and it's a single-family homes area. And I would like to state, I think earlier it mentioned that this project is surrounded by two-story buildings. All on the west-hand side on Encinal, there's only one two-story building house there. The rest are just one story. There's only one two-story building. So there's two things that have concerned my neighbors on that side. And the first one is the importance of the gate and a fence or a wall to make that gate not just a token item. We definitely have a very small street there. And the Google Maps will back me up. It's very tiny. Cars cannot go opposite directions without one pulling over to the side and letting the other one go. Like many of my neighbors, I moved to this neighborhood because of the schools. We love the Crescenta schools. And I, with my children, walk to school every day down this small road, and we have to fight the traffic of all the folks that use this street to line up to drop off their children at Lincoln Elementary. And I understand it, and that's part of the deal when I moved in. But the gate is very important, not to allow people to drive on this road when there's children that are walking on this with no sidewalks, and increase the traffic on our street. We're worried about their guests parking on our street, which is already very full. So the gate is very important to myself and my neighbors. The second element is especially the Olson project, they put three-story buildings right up on the west side, and that was the thing that really annoyed us. And I appreciate the Ganges taking it down to 2 stories there. If there's any discussion of elimination of any of the buildings, I know that was on the table or in discussion. My neighbors and myself would appreciate it on the west side because, again, we're just one-story homes for the most part. And also, if there's any way for this common area to be considered on the west side of the common open space, to be on the west side. It seems like this would be a backyard for these people in the sense of their gathering and an open area, and having it on the west side again would help us not being inundated with a row of tall condos. So thank you very much. I appreciate you hearing me.
Thank you. Mr. Ganji? You're up again. If you have any questions or anything you need to add.
Thank you. I would just like to thank everyone for their time coming down here tonight and the support that we've gotten on the project. One thought on the western side, and we did look at it. If we eliminated units there and we added the community space there, we really questioned if that would be compatible with as far as the use goes, because that space versus the private garden spaces is really where this group of homeowners would have gatherings like birthday parties and that kind of thing. And it might be a noise generator on that side that would be less compatible than having backyards adjacent to other backyards. So that's why we decided we would double the setback there. And if you look at the building that we have there, after the first floor, the roof comes out and starts at about 7.5 feet above the floor of the next one. So we've really tried to minimize the line of sight of those buildings so that they don't appear to be looming over. And it was a big consideration when we went back, and we do understand, and we heard it loud and clear, these neighbors to the west and what their intentions were. And so I'd like to close with that.
I have one question.
Sure,
Are you going to be putting solar panels on all the roofs, or is this just for the minimal electric?
You know, we're going to look at the rebates that are available at the time that we're doing it. We found, like in our building in Burbank, there's tremendous rebates that are incentives to put that up, but those are disappearing over time, and then those funds are reloaded. So we would like to. What we're definitely committing to is putting the hookups there so that the individuals could add the solar panels. But we definitely, ideally, we would love to have that done. Provided we could.
You're going to have to be careful if you do, because of the reflection. And you've got the building to the north of it, a little higher, and the freeway. There can be some reflection issues with your roofs.
From the panels. Yeah, I mean, ideally they absorb the light as much as possible, so they're as efficient as possible.
But the code requires you to stub out the solar panels now anyway, so it's not that you're doing something.
Oh, okay.
You know, the green building codes were new.
Yeah, the green building code has been great. You know, we've been working through it, and we found buildings designed under the green building code have great insulation values and really hold their temperature really well with the radiant barriers that we're putting in, the insulation. We're doing a couple of tweaks, like we're insulating the slab so we don't get a heat sink there, but we're really happy to work with the green building code and also try to hit the highest tier of it.
The reason I'm asking, when she's asking about Commissioner Palmer, about the solar panels, because the neighbors want to see that, so we don't want to have a building that something is promised and you don't have it.
Right. Yeah. We would.
The rebates may not be available.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to wait a little bit. Like if you wait a few months, it's a whole different situation than it was at the
Glendale,
at the beginning.
It's difficult.
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen some actually very good numbers as far as rebates go, but the question is, are those funds still available when you're ready to take the rebate?
Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right. Public hearing is closed. All right. I'll start with you, Mr. Simonian.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone sticking around until almost 8 o'clock. And I'd like to start off by thanking the Ganges for really taking the time and meeting with the community and doing all the outreach and really coming forward with a completely different design than the Olson project that's presented. When we look at the Olson proposal, the overall mass scale bulk of it and the style of it was certainly not what the La Crescenta area wanted, and that was made very clear by City Council as well. And when we look at the current project, it certainly is very different. It has the different plan types. It has a more appropriate architectural style, and there's a lot of variety within them. And so that is, I think, a big improvement as to what it was before. As far as the project itself is concerned, it's really a big project. I mean, we're talking about 1,400 linear feet of land area, and it's very unique in that it is kind of wedged in between the freeway and the surrounding context, and it is multifamily zoned, etc. And so it should be built out as a multifamily project, and I believe the typology of the building type, I should say, that is proposed, which is the 2 over grade or 3 over grade on grade project, is appropriate for this area. And so some of those variances that were granted as far as not having a subterranean parking garage, let's say, if it's designed right, if the project is laid out correctly, would work in this scenario. And so as we've really gone through and asked all the questions and whatnot, I've made some notes, and in really no particular order, I'd like to kind of go over it, which will give you the mindset of the approach. Overall, I support the project, but I'd like to go through some of the areas that I think need help and some of the areas that I think the project could improve upon. And so as a general direction, as a general direction of style, as a general direction of overall, let's say, concept, I believe it's there. Now we need to fine-tune it, and so a lot of my comments are going to be based on those kind of scenarios. And I want to point out that I believe the Ganges are wonderful people, wonderful family, and wonderful developers. And so this is not so much of a criticism of the exact design. It's just more of, it's such a large project that it is going to take several times to come in and out to get it just right. And we do the same thing with single-family homes. We do certainly the same thing with multifamily projects. And so this isn't different. But the overall concept, I believe, in this project, compared to the project we saw previously, is very different. The project, let's say we saw differently, was totally off base, whereas in this is no, it's on the right track. And so I just wanted to start off with that so you understood the concept within where it's coming from. The general layout of having 2-story buildings at the east and west sides and then tapering up to 3 stories is, I think, a very good use of planning. The unit sizes are fine. The landscape requirements, the way it's laid out, are work out just well. I believe the biggest comment I would have is the common open space. When we're looking at the common open space requirements, which were some 5,000 square feet, without going into details, when we take the 37 by 86 feet, which is the middle portion, it comes out to about 3,200, so it's shy of that. And I believe staff's comments in integrating 2 more open space within the project and dividing it somewhere along the way makes good sense. Different concepts were discussed, whether these should be elimination of, one of these bars altogether, or it should be a combination of just maybe removal of 2 of the homes. I believe it makes more sense to remove just 2 homes and thereby keeping a buffer on the northern side, so as children or whatnot are playing in the common open space, there's kind of a barrier to them and they're not going to be running out into the driveway. And so it'll be more usable and parents will have an easier time controlling it and it'll be more used as opposed to a total open way. Also, having maybe perhaps 1 here and 1 on the western edge makes sense. The western edge will provide the adequate buffering that we need from the west side, and in this area, it'll service these homes in its proximity. I would have different themes for the open space. 1 could be more for recreation, sports or whatnot. 1 could be for families, which include barbecues and whatnot, where the kids could run around in. And 1 could be for pet owners. Literally, that's a big thing. It's a great selling point. And it's a nice feature as well, where people could basically, instead of coming home late at night, walking up Pennsylvania and whatnot, or trying to go into the western neighborhood, they kind of have that area within. It's a great selling point and something for you to consider.
Could I just quickly clarify, were you talking about if we remove either 2 or 2 individual units separated on the north side, or you're saying on the south side?
On the south side. So we would keep the northernmost home, let's say, in a given...
Along Encinal and that.
Correct. Let's say we would keep this number 6, and 4 and 5 would become some sort of an open space. And maybe on the west side, all 3 are eliminated and whatnot. It's something that needs to be worked out. I think at 30 units, it's below the requirements as far as what's allowed, but there's been quite a bit of talk and direction previously about the overall density, and so this kind of gets us both of what we're looking for, which is the common open space and at the same time creating that transition from multifamily to single family. How you decide to do it and how you work it out, I think, will be important to see, but I don't want to go far as prescribing lose the 3 homes all the way to the west. No, you just got to try to work that out. As been pointed out, the trash areas are common trash is a really good idea for a project this size. We certainly don't want 60 or 90 trash bins out on the curb, but having maybe 2 or 3 certainly 2, perhaps 3, makes more sense, but that's something for you guys to look at. It might also be areas where you could kind of utilize it on the, well, I don't want to prescribe it, but that just, I think 2, if not 3, would be a good use of it. A lighting plan makes sense to have some sort of a lighting plan for a project this size. Insofar as the sound wall is concerned, if it happens, it'd be wonderful. It'd be wonderful for the entire neighborhood. Now, we can't bank on it happening. What we need to do is kind of protect this project from itself, and I think it's going to be a requirement of the track map anyways to have a block wall on the south side, more for even transients coming in and out or whatever the case might be. So I urge that to be considered, if not maybe even conditioned. As Ms. Palmer pointed out, a roof plan would make sense, which goes into study of your downspouts, and it could be actually used as an asset as you're looking at the project, because as you're looking at your elevations, you could use the downspouts as accents, etc. Overall, the materials that were illustrated, I believe, are in the right spirit of the design. They look good. The colors are fine. I would urge that we do go with siding, hardy material. It's going to last better, it's going to look better, and it has a little more of a 21st century feel to it if it's done right, as opposed to something from the 20th century. Although your design will work just fine with the hardy siding, it's not going to make a difference. It's just going to look a little better. It's going to age better. The 2x2 woods pieces don't really weather all that well over time, so I would urge you to come up with something alternative to that. I love the look. The look works really well, but it also has very much of a 1970s mammoth kind of look to it, which I think you want to stay away from. And so as far as the studies that would be important for us to see diagrammatically, I believe you had mentioned an electric charging system for the vehicles. Wonderful. Let's designate an area and perhaps the guest parking area where you have a station. Groundwater, we had talked about the dry well system or whatever it might be. I think it's important to have that study, as we're talking about a 0.5% slope, which is some 20-foot difference in grade. So it's something that you want to take a look at this stage, as opposed to going through building and safety and then having to come back because of some variations that occur. It's a good thing to at least get a civil on board and get an idea of that. And then, of course, the solar panel locations make sense as well to be identified. If let's just look at it from today's point of view, if they're there, if they're going to be promised, let's build them in there. And if they are going to be built in there, how are they going to look on the roofing material? Are they going to be integrated or not? The gate fence along the west side, I believe you're already doing this, but it should be more of a substantial piece. So in the spirit of time, I went through these very quickly because I know you guys are very professional and experienced, so I didn't really have to elaborate all that much. In general, I think the project is in the right direction. It has all the right feel and design, and now we just need to basically make sure that those details that we're talking about are going to be there, and that's the only way we can make sure that those details are there, is if we have some sort of a study that indicates to us that those details will be incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Simorian. Commissioner Palmer?
I have a similar list. And I'll briefly go through them. I totally agree with removing the units, but I agree with Mr. Simonian, maybe you don't take out 3 in one area, but if you create 1 or 2 out, you give a different spatial relationship, and I think that works well. I like the idea of maybe having a passive area at the western end might be a good situation. I think we need the night lighting plan. I think we need more trash areas. And I totally agree with the hardy board prospect and the 2x2s, so I had that down. I've looked at the landscape plan, and I think this could be a very good project, but you're very limited with, basically you have 3 shrubs. That's it. So you've got the same shrubs at every garage. I'd vary and add some more variety of shrubs in the area, and you're going to have to work with the tree areas. But and then I would highly suggest trying to implement some bioswales project. But overall, I'm very happy with the project.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
You did go down the list. You had them.
She was quick.
Identical, yeah.
She was
I've been working with you a long time.
I know. We know what we're going to say.
Thank you for the comments. I do concur with my colleagues, agree on the comments. I think the project is in the positive direction. I have a little different take on the style. I think it has a little Polynesian flavor to it, which I think it's nice, although it has the mid-century. I do agree with staff's condition that the additional common area should be created for such a project, and it should be kind of placed in a location that everybody can use it, not just at the end of the building or somewhere that it's. Now you have one that is central, it's used properly. I mean, it could be used, and again, maybe divide those new spaces in 2 areas that will give the western edge a little buffer with the single family and also create some more common area in the front portion of the project. And I agree with the Hardy Board. I think that's something that, will last longer. And the solar panels, should be incorporated in this project, and it should be placed that should not be because you're going to see the roof line from the freeway. Now, one comment that I would make, and I would, see what my colleagues think about the AC units being eliminated and having a split system with a furnace in the unit and a condenser outside. And I think there's enough room to put these condensers. I'll leave that up.
Would you make that a recommendation or a condition?
Because we're going to see 3 large units, even though you're going to screen them. But usually when we see the multifamily project, these are not individually screened. They're screened by the building or by the parapet. In this case, it's not. So I'm thinking maybe we have 30 units of, that are going to be sitting on top of the roof. And I think that's going to be visible from the freeway. This way it will eliminate the hatch, the roof hatch. But I trust they're good designers, and I think they can make it work. But with that, I'll support the project on all the comments and conditions that have been set. Now, Mr. Simone, you said you wanted to revisit this or show some diagrams. What did you exactly mean by that? Are you not willing to approve the project today?
Well, I believe there are enough items that need quite a bit of coordination. And so the question that you asked, Mr. Chair, is, would I support a motion of staff coordinating that, or would I refer to it coming back? I think if it was simply having diagrams of the solar panels or the gray water system, et cetera, is something that I'd be very comfortable with staff and et cetera looking at it. When we're talking about actually the common open space of 30 units being reworked on a site plan that's 1,400 linear feet long, I think it deserves a quick revisit. I'm fine with doing a date certain. If we could do kind of a continuance, if staff thinks that's appropriate way of doing it, of using that, and I know that's been edgy in the past, but my point is not to slow things down. My point is to have it date where you guys turn this around, come back, and we go through it. However, I think it deserves the attention of making sure that we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's on an important project like this.
Now, can we continue this, staff? Or does it has to be a
For
new
additional
application?
information.
Well, you can continue. Hold on.
I'll open it.
You can continue something, a project for additional information. You can do that. And that's really your discretion.
The reason I'm asking to continue it to make Commissioner Simonian comfortable with the project, I think it's wise to continue it because the design I think we're satisfied with. The materials we're satisfied
It's
with.
potentially a very good project.
It's a good project.
Absolutely.
So I don't think it should be a new submittal or new application.
Not at all.
I mean,
We need to see more.
it's
Okay.
just,
Well, then,
I do agree.
that seems like it's appropriate to be a continuance if that's.
Okay.
Because most of it is just clarifications and questions and answering them.
Okay.
Maybe if it is continued, some of those other items could be.
Absolutely. The idea is to address them all. Yeah.
I'm going to open
Well, the continuation is really just for further information. So some of these are design things that you've asked that to be changed as conditions of approval, and then some would be such as the common space to kind of explore other options. So,
Mr. J,
they would have the opportunity to make those changes, but we couldn't.
Yeah, but Mr. J, you're already recommending on your conditions that 3 units or the number that we're trying to eliminate part of the conditions of approval. So how does it?
No, we're fine. If you're continuing it for that, if we're trying to solve all of the problems before we come back, I'm not sure that we can.
I'm just saying that they
Expect
will
that
be
from the
solved,
applicant.
can solve some if they can do it within the time. It just makes
We
the
could
whole.
see if they're amenable to it.
I'm going to open the public hearing because Mr. Ganji, please come up.
Because with the
I was thinking out in the audience, this is the softest, nicest loss I've ever experienced on a project. Our issue is that our variances are expiring in June. And
you will probably need to extend them anyway because you probably will not get a building permit by that time.
I mean, we submitted in September to see you now in February. So we get a sense of backlog and timing situation. So we're really reluctant to. I mean, in the past we've worked very well with staff to look at conditions and consider options and do things, but we're going to be really reluctant to.
If we have a continuance, how much time are we talking about?
Yeah. How much time do you need to do this? I mean, it shouldn't take that long.
You could concurrently be working on your construction documents, et cetera, because I think we've given you some really specific ideas to push forward. And I think you read us loud and clear of how to fix it. So it could be happening concurrently. It's totally in your court. You could say 2 weeks, you could say 4 weeks, whatever.
So we could say we could be back up here in 2 weeks and we would be on your schedule?
That's what I'm trying to say.
If you turn it around.
We have to find out what their schedule.
We would pick a date this evening.
Part.
I don't know if I
we
believe
make the
that.
commitment, you need to make the commitment.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. When we continue to a date certain, that's the whole point. The staff looks at availability, and then we ask the applicant if they could get the drawings done in time, and then there's a date certain, and that's when people come back, and that's when it's presented again. So yes, you will get that date.
Okay, so is that something that you could commit to then? Let's say we say 2 weeks from now?
When will you get us the drawings?
Next week.
We have to write a staff report. Just to step back, we work on open space and common open space issues on projects on a daily basis, and the staff is very comfortable programming and finding solid solutions for open space requirements. I think with a little more direction from the board, we're already visualizing what it takes to take out one unit here, one unit here, have 3 discrete common spaces, possibly have one larger one plus the larger common space. If you were to give us more direction in terms of what you think would be the appropriate reaction or response to the site, we might be able to avoid the continuance. But that's just, trying to speed things
I don't know
along.
that I would want to designate what to take out. I think they're good enough architects that they could come up with
I was thinking
solutions.
conceptually rather than
We should at least
specifically.
give them a direction where approximately where these units should be taken out from.
We did
We
kind
sort of
of,
did,
yeah.
but have three different spaces.
Kind of
It makes
equidistant,
sense
like
that-
create 3 zones.
I mean, we could do similar like what we did on the projects this project that we brought you is we had several options and we met with staff and went over pros and cons and arrived at best solutions.
I'm okay with approving it today with
Staff thinks
staff's,
they can do it.
but if you feel otherwise, I'm
I'm
willing
okay
to.
if
I'm willing to
Staff's
entertain
comfortable
it.
with that.
We feel comfortable, right, Roger?
We know
All
where
right.
they live.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to then have a specific date when they come back to you with all this stuff?
No, we would just work with them as we normally do after a hearing. As soon as he brings the drawings to us, we'll have a meeting, we'll review them. We'll make sure that all of your conditions, and if some of them are considerations, we'll see if they're met. And if they are, then we'll move forward into plan check.
Well, let's go over the conditions.
All right, I have 4 pages. So stretched out over 4 pages. Some of them are a little repetitive. I've tried to edit those, so forgive me if I hit some things twice. And again, this will be in no specific order. We will ask that the applicant provide a roof plan for the entire site. We will ask for site drainage to be assessed through their civil engineer and make sure that we don't have issues in terms of the length of the run. If they need to install pumps or whatever else it's going to take, we'll make sure that's appropriate. We heard from the board that there's a strong preference for hardy plank or cementitious kind of siding material that resembles wood. We've heard that you would rather see the 2x2 kind of texture strips removed, but possibly substituted with a hardy material or something else that would...
Or metal.
Or metal.
Or metal.
Or metal.
Or metal.
So, the applicant has already indicated the windows will be recessed and 2x6 framing will be used. We're going to ask that all drawings for each of the unit types show downspout and gutter configuration to make sure it's appropriate. We're going to ask that additional trash bin collection locations be added, at least another site, if not a second, so that for a total of either 2 to 3 trash pickup locations. We're going to ask for the labeling on sheet A5 to be corrected so that we can see where the trash enclosure is, the trash bins in the common or the central common space. We're going to verify that the planting area along Encinal where the large trees are proposed is wide enough to accommodate 4-foot box trees, which would mean 6-foot width of planting area for the 4-foot box.
4-foot box?
48 inch.
Yeah, 48-inch box.
Is that what's required?
No, that's what they're proposing, and you were questioning whether the width of the planting area was adequate for the... So would we need 6 feet?
I just thought you were talking about the west end, and I was...
No, this was a comment, this was something you made about the oak trees toward the front, the kind of east end of the site.
No, it would be along the north end.
Yeah, the north,
Yes,
the
okay.
northeast kind of.
For the sidewalk on the proposed parkway.
So we'll need to have a 6-foot planting bed for a 4-foot box. Is that accurate? Okay. We're going to review the trees proposed as part of this project at the corner of the site with traffic engineering to make sure we don't have any sightline issues for traffic entering the freeway. We're going to verify that the driveway slopes and the transitions to the driveways are accurate, and that the little planter strips allow for that transition without creating a trip hazard. We're going to ask for additional bike parking in common areas, possibly in some of these common open spaces, and they've already indicated there'll be bike parking, I guess, inside the garages, most likely. We are asking for a reduction in unit count of 2 to 3 units, as we're talking about, with the addition of either 1 or possibly 2 additional common space areas, and that these 2 or 3 common space areas will have different programming areas to accommodate different uses. Trash cans. I wasn't sure if this was a condition or a consideration to place a block wall along the south property line. They're proposing a wire fence, and then there's a staff condition that binds.
If you did the wire fence and planted that wire fence, it'd be much looser and more open than having a wall.
Okay, the wire fence is proposed, and then staff is recommending trailer or vine climbing planting.
And then if they did put a sound wall, you wouldn't necessarily want two walls. So
Right, the sound wall would be some distance, so we'll eliminate that.
Jay, does the code require us to, during subdivision, is it required to put the fence wall? I think you were questioning that.
I don't believe the subdivision going through a tentative map requires.
Okay.
No.
And if it does, maybe that could override it by us.
If it does
dictating.
require, then they'll have to do it, but I don't think it does.
Okay, we will ask for, in terms of some of the green issues we've been talking about, electrical vehicle charging station in one of the open to the street, at least one in the open areas. They've indicated there'll be units inside the condos, but that's not one of our issues really. In terms of solar, there's a little bit of confusion because I don't think we can mandate that they install solar units, but they have said that they're going to put the stub outs in the location. They can identify locations for solar and then put the stub outs there. It will be up to individual. If they don't do it as a group, individual owners will be doing it. We are not allowed by state law to regulate the design of solar installations, so we have to kind of accept that they're going to be on the roof and they are going to be visible. Hopefully reflection won't be an issue, but we can't deny solar for any kind of design reason. Likewise, we can't mandate that they use this reclaimed water system, but we can work with them to identify proper locations if they're choosing to use it. We can ask them to incorporate bioswales if possible, and was that a consideration or a condition?
It was just a suggestion.
Okay, so
I think the condition is overall to look at the drainage and grading plan and to basically come up with a conceptual drainage or grading plan, whatever works for you, whatever you plan on doing. And so that's thought out, that's all.
And ultimately, that's building and safety will be, reviewing that.
Because if it's a dry well system or an infiltration trench, in which case it's not going to affect your heights. But if you are thinking about, and you can't do that for whatever reason, because you're in a liquefaction zone, or because of the high water ground table, which we don't know about, we haven't seen a soil report. And if those things come up, you're going to have to get rid of the dry well concept, the infiltration trench. Let's say if your soil is expansive and clay, you will not be able to use it. So that's what I'm getting at. And then if all of a sudden, if you're got to build it up and you're 20 feet in the rear popping up, it's going to throw out the whole DRB approval process. So it makes sense to just spend a little bit of time, make sure that the soil report is assessed by your soil engineer and looked at it by civil, come up with a plan, and then if it's a dry well, it's just a circular thing going down, and it just indicated on a site plan, and we move forward. It's more to help you down the road so you don't get in trouble and have to come back with a tight time frame.
Okay, so we'll have the condition for a conceptual drainage plan to make sure that's part of the review documents for building and safety, make sure it doesn't affect the overall site plan or design. There is a condition to increase the variety of shrub plantings, particularly at the driveways.
Throughout, basically.
Throughout the project. Another question for me was a consideration versus condition for the split system AC. I wasn't sure. I think
I'll leave it up to.
We're okay with the rooftop units as long as we
I'm okay with the rooftop units if it's screened properly.
Okay.
But that's one of the things that comes back to how is it screened and how does it look?
Because it's going to be sitting up. I mean, I think they can do it. Most of the.
You want to make it a condition?
I think it should be a condition because.
Condition to screen the.
Condition to use a split system, so they'll have a furnace within the building and a small condenser outside, just like you do it on a regular house.
Yeah, it's okay. So condition to.
And they could choose wherever they want to put it.
Because then it's out of the way. And most of these, developments as such do use that system. They're individual units, and it eliminates hatches, eliminates.
Well, if there's a compressor on the roof, you still need a.
Well, the compressor will go on the ground.
Go on the ground level.
On the ground level.
By the entry or.
By the patio or somewhere.
Okay. We'll find good locations.
I'm sorry. Come on up.
one advantage of it being a consideration is if we could show that those units could be hidden and adequately screened, we're not putting AC units in landscape areas. What we would like, what could be a condition is that we have a split system, which, as you said, would bring the size of those units down to just a condenser, which would then be easier to screen and to hide on the roof. But I think we got great opportunities on this roof to screen the unit, and there's not great opportunities to use the roof space as garden space. So it's really the ground floor that's precious to us.
Because these, the one package units are quite a bit of, you're going to use at least 4 tons. I'm assuming they're going to be sizable units.
3 to 4 tons.
Yeah, 3 to 4 tons.
Yeah.
So those are sizable units. I'm fine with a condenser on top. That's a smaller. I'm sure you've done this. Most of these units are now high efficiency. They're smaller size. They're narrow, so they could be. Less noise.
No, we could definitely use those, especially in areas where we couldn't figure out a space where you wouldn't be able to see it.
I think that's wise. Eliminates access-wise, maintenance-wise. It's much easier.
Yeah, we like to have good access to the roof anyway. Otherwise, they want to start putting ladders on the outside and other things. So the hatches that we use are skylight integrated hatches, and they work really well. Again, I think if we're allowed to explore it, we could really make sure that they're hidden from view. Because if they're hidden from view, then what would be the other objection to having them on the roof?
If you could do that, that's fine. But it all depends how the motion goes. We're going to approve it tonight or not, because we're adding quite a...
I think we're leaning towards approving it tonight, especially going through the time and going through the conditions and prescribing them. We could approve it tonight.
We discussed all those conditions at length.
Yeah.
So we'll...
All right.
So it's kind of up to you if you want to... Sounds like we're making a split system.
It's a split system.
With an effort to
screen the, if you can put the condensers on the ground level, that's fine. If not, you can have it on the roof, but it's a smaller unit.
Well, the condition will read something along the lines of minimize size of rooftop HVAC equipment and screen per code and per design standards to match the architecture. There are also a few staff conditions that weren't fully addressed, so I just want to make sure the board wants the staff conditions to be incorporated. That would include the placement of the median in Pennsylvania to meet traffic's requirements. We have a condition to amend the landscape plan to show additional trees at the west side of the property for more of a buffer with the neighbors. We have the staff condition to plant vines on the wire fence, which we're keeping. Wherever we find locations for the existing trash bin plus wherever the new trash location would go, it has to be outside of the interior setback. So we'll have to find those locations. A lighting plan, I think you discussed that you want to see a lighting plan.
Unless it's in the south. They could put the trashes at the end of the driveways, in which case it might end up being in that rear setback, but it's kind of out of the way because it's next to the freeway and the on-ramp.
Just has to be outside of the setback.
Yeah, it's a 5-foot setback on the southern property line.
Do we have the authority to allow the trash bins to be located within the rear setback in a scenario like this?
Let them figure it out.
Not really, no.
Let them figure it out.
Code conquers all.
All right.
Because I think it needs to be centralized. It's easier for the the person living there.
I want them to go from 400 feet.
400 feet to get to the trash.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then finally, staff had recommended consideration to vary the accent colors to provide subtle differentiation between the individual units.
I'm fine with what I see today.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Consideration,
Well, we can eliminate it.
Eliminate it.
We have enough, so we'll eliminate that. And that's everything that I wrote down.
Okay.
Are we comfortable with this?
So are we comfortable with this?
Well, the gate is part of the proposed. The gate
is part of the project.
Gate is part of the project.
Yeah.
There's definitely going to be a prohibition of pedestrian access through the site.
It's only for emergency purposes.
There'll be crash gate, right?
It'll be on the public right-of-way, too, so they won't control it.
If we've answered everything and those are all the comments, then I would move to approve based on the 4-page list of conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with conditions. This will be a roll call. Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Mr. Mardian?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
I don't think we
We
can
got minutes.
approve, we can't approve the minutes.
Well, actually, you're right. We cannot approve the minutes because it wasn't listed properly on the agenda. So we'll continue that
Plus,
for
a
next
couple
year.
of the commissioners are not here.
Well, you've got a quorum.
They weren't here last week.
Oh, it looked like based on the minutes you were.
I think you just need people to.
We can't approve the minutes tonight
Okay,
anyway.
there you go.
All right.
So
It's a moot point.
right.
So motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Adjourn.
Thank you.